Chapter 5208. Even if there was no way to rope them in directly, they should at least build a good relationship with them, and not become enemies. Otherwise, it would be a huge joke if Lin Yi were to publicize their sex counter moves in a fit of anger. Lin Yi soon realized what everyone was thinking. Although he never intended to make a fuss about this, it was not a bad thing. Since the result is out, let's call it a day. Lung Lung and Duan Muyu, both of you can focus on recuperating. Don't leave any sequelae, Exanijia said immediately. Hold on, I think this voting is unfair, so it should not be counted. Xue Jianfeng jumped out to object again. Oh, everyone voted on the spot without any chance to contact each other secretly. I would like to ask, how is it unfair? Exanijia frowned. I think with the level of these voters, not all of them can understand the meaning of this duel. How can the result be counted if a group of people who can't even understand the meaning of the duel be the judges? To ensure the fairness of the result, I suggest we follow the tradition of the Archaic Alliance and let the Golden Core experts vote, Xue Jianfeng said unscrupulously. As soon as he said that, everyone's face darkened. How could he say that their level was not high enough? Wasn't this guy looking down on them too much? However, Xue Jianfeng's words were not baseless. In the past, every competition in the Archaic Alliance was indeed judged by the Golden Core experts. Only they had enough vision to understand the whole meaning of the duel between Foundation Establishment disciples. Otherwise, as Xue Jianfeng said, ordinary Foundation Establishment perfected experts might not be able to understand what Lung Lung and Duan Muyu had done. However, if it was really decided by the Golden Core experts, he, Bing Wuqing, and Exanijia were the only three people present. As long as there were no accidents, Bing Wuqing would definitely be on his side. Wouldn't it be up to him to decide? You're being unreasonable. Even if the Golden Core experts were to be the judges, they must be from different sections. Who is qualified to do that now? Exanijia refuted on the spot, and then said decisively, it's hard to go against the will of the masses. I announce the winner of this duel is... At this moment, Lin Yi suddenly interrupted. Since both sides are equally matched, how about we call it a draw? A draw? Exanijia was stunned and said awkwardly. But there has never been a tie. Moreover, this match is directly related to the qualification to participate in the Archean trial. Can't they both qualify for the trial at the same time? Although this is a bit of an exception, special cases are special cases. I don't think the higher-ups of the Archaic Alliance would be so unreasonable. After all, these are two rare geniuses. It would be a pity if one of them was eliminated, said Lin Yi. Originally, whether Duan Muyu qualified for the Archean trial or not had nothing to do with him. However, after watching this duel, this woman's determination really moved him. Moreover, Lin Yi was also very interested in the rejuvenation of withered leaves. There was no mention of this move in the summary of the mental cultivation methods sent by Tian Chan. Therefore, he might as well do her a favor. Maybe he could find a chance to get some words out of her in the future. Exanijia pondered for a moment and finally nodded. Yes, Granduncle Master is right. Rules are dead and people are alive. For this duel, Duan Muyu even used the rejuvenation of withered leaves. It would be too unreasonable to force her to lose. Since that's the case, I'll declare it a draw. Nobody objected to this result. Firstly, it was to do Lin Yi a favor. Secondly, the result did not affect them at all. At most, Duan Muyu qualified for the trial. Moreover, Duan Muyu had just used the rejuvenation of withered leaves. It would be impossible for her to recover within 3 months. Even if she qualified for the trial, it would only be symbolic. Wait, Xue Jianfeng jumped out again and interrupted. What do you want? Exanijia, the honest man, finally got angry after being interrupted by this guy several times. He said with an unfriendly expression, according to the results of the voting, Cold One, announcing it as a draw is already very considerate of you. Xue Jianfeng, don't push your luck. Xue Jianfeng choked for a moment. At this moment, he actually felt a substantial killing intent from the other party for the first time. An honest man was really scary when he was angry. After choking for a moment, Xue Jianfeng finally chose to shut his mouth. Now, not only the honest man, Exainegia, was angry, but everyone else was also staring at him with an unfriendly expression. If this went on, he would completely offend the crowd. It was unnecessary just for such a small matter. In this way, the opening battle of the 5th round of the trial competition ended in a draw. Cold and Duanmuyu qualified for the Archean trial at the same time. Duanmuyu panted weakly as she forced herself to lift her head to look at Lin Yi. "Thank you." She knew very well that if it was not for Lin Yi's insistence, Cold would have definitely won this battle. If that happened, she would be eliminated on the spot. Losing the qualification for the trial was a small matter, but it would affect the reputation of Yiling's sect. That was why she was grateful. "You're welcome," Lin Yi said as he looked at her. Not only was she very weak, but she also suffered from severe frostbite due to the intense battle with Cold. She was too close to Cold when the ice prison mirror was broken. He said, "If you don't mind, how about I help you to heal your wound? I think it's hard for you to recover on your own in your current state, right?" But Duanmuyu was a little hesitant. She was now in a weak state where the vital energy in her body was very weak. She did not know how long it would take for her to completely recover on her own. Moreover, the degree of frostbite from the ice prison mirror was not something that could be recovered easily unless there was a special medicinal pill in this area. "I'm going to heal Cold anyway. If you don't mind, you can come along. It's no trouble at all." Lin Yi smiled. Duanmuyu hesitated for a moment and finally nodded. "All right, thank you." With her status and background in Yiling's sect, the sect's higher-ups would definitely think of a way if she made a request. However, it was a problem whether she could take the medicinal pill in her current state. If she was not careful, the life-saving medicinal pill might turn into a fatal poison instead. Instead of that, it was better to take the risk and trust Lin Yi for once. Chapter 5209. TCH, he doesn't even let Duanmuyu go. What a pervert. Xue Jianfeng curled his lips at the scene, but there was an obvious jealousy in him. He'd been dreaming of replacing Lin Yi with himself. He had Lingshan and the others help Cold and Duanmuyu to a secluded area to sit down. He then sat down and started healing the two girls. The frostbite from the shattered ice prison mirror was very troublesome, and even a great recovery pill wouldn't have much of an effect. Lung Lung was fine, since she was the source of all the frostbite. Even if he got frostbite, it wouldn't be too serious. Duanmuyu, on the other hand, was in trouble. Not only was her frostbite severe, but she was also in an extremely weak state. Even if she used qi to treat her wounds, it would be even worse if she used a great recovery pill. It was a good thing that Lin Yi's consciousness was much sharper than when he was on Sky Class Island, and his control of qi was much finer and sharper. Otherwise, he might really be helpless. Feeling the subtle changes in her body, Duanmuyu's eyes widened in disbelief. This Lin Yi actually had such a miraculous healing method. "Don't move, or don't blame me if you lose control of your qi." Lin Yi frowned. I'm sorry." Duanmuyu blushed and quickly suppressed the shock in her heart, trying her best not to move. After a while, Lung Lung's internal injuries were no longer a problem. She told Lin Yi about it, and went to the side to continue her healing. Duanmuyu, on the other hand, had only recovered a small portion of her injuries. "There's something I'm really curious about. I wonder if you could answer it for me?" Lin Yi suddenly asked in the middle of healing. Duanmuyu paused and reacted. "This is why you're healing me." "Don't worry, it's just a common question." Lin Yi smiled and asked. "Rejuvenation leaf should be a very costly move, right? Can you tell me about it?" "Overdrawing your life force in advance, plus a 3-month period of weakness." Duanmuyu didn't try to hide anything. There was nothing to hide. Anyone in the Archaic Alliance with the slightest bit of experience would know this. What about the effect? After paying such a huge price, he must have recovered to his peak state, right? "Why don't I look like it?" Lin Yi continued to ask. "You could tell?" Duanmuyu was shocked. "Nonsense. If you had really recovered to your peak state at that time, why would you need to be so restrained when facing cold? I think it's because he doesn't have enough true qi in his body, so he doesn't dare to rashly use powerful moves, right?" Lin Yi speculated. Even from his point of view, the combination of falling leaves in autumn and a mountain-like leaf was a very simple and unsolvable combo. Not to mention the foundation building stage, it would be very effective even in the gold core stage. It should not be a problem to deal with Lung Lung in that state. Duan Muyu went silent for a moment before he said slowly, "Since it's like that, then I won't conceal it anymore. I didn't utilize the complete version of rejuvenation, so I haven't recovered to my peak state. I've only recovered less than half of it." "I see, then the period of weakness won't be as long as 3 months, right? Can I make it in time for the primordial trials?" Lin Yi suddenly came to a realization. This Duan Muyu was not the kind of woman who only lived for the sex reputation. The fact that she could use the incomplete version of rejuvenation in that situation not only proved that she had outstanding qualifications, but also proved that she was very smart. If everything goes well, it should be possible. Duan Muyu nodded. This primordial trials happened once in 1,000 years. She did not want to miss it no matter what. "Then, I wish you all the best." Lin Yi suddenly stood up and said lightly, "The frostbite has been cleared. You can only rely on yourself to slowly recover from the following matters." "Excuse me." "Oh, thank you." Duan Muyu sensed the condition of her body. As expected, other than being extremely weak, everything else was normal. She could not help but be surprised and happy. Seeing that Lin Yi was about to leave, she asked, "Say, why did you help me? Could it be that you've fallen for me?" Pfft. Lin Yi's body staggered, almost choking on her words. Wasn't this woman a little too direct? "What? Isn't it?" Duan Muyu was stunned. In her opinion, since Lin Yi showed his goodwill to her for no reason and took the initiative to heal her, he must have some ulterior motives. It couldn't be that he really wanted to ask that common-sense question just now, right? Other than her looks, could it be that he had taken a fancy to something else? Although the word beauty didn't really match with Duan Muyu's manly temperament, it was undeniable that she was indeed a unique beauty. There was no lack of suitors in the small pugilistic world of the supreme ancient immortal realms. It was just that none of them could enter her sights. Being stared at by her like this, Lin Yi felt a little awkward. He thought for a moment and said, "If I said that I was looking for an opportunity to secretly learn rejuvenation, would you believe me?" Although this was mostly a joke, after witnessing the heaven-defying effects of rejuvenation, it would be a lie if Lin Yi said that he was not tempted at all. Although this move had terrible aftereffects, the powerful effect of instantly restoring one's peak state was still very useful in certain situations. However, to Lin Yi, who had the jade pendant's space to continuously replenish his spirit qi, rejuvenation was not that valuable. It could only be considered a good backup trump card. Of course, it still had great research value. "You want to learn rejuvenation?" Duan Muyu looked at Lin Yi seriously, pondered for a moment, and shook her head. "This is the trump card of our Yiling sect, and we can't teach it to outsiders casually. Moreover, the aptitude requirement to master this move is very unique. Even among the Yiling sect's disciples, there aren't many who can master it." "Oh, forget it then. It was just a whim. Goodbye." As he spoke, Lin Yi left, leaving only a silhouette in the distance. This Lin Yi is really a guy who can't be seen through. Duan Muyu said thoughtfully. Although the battle between Cold and Duan Muyu had dragged out a lot of time, there were very few battles in the 5th round to begin with. Basically, there were only 2 or 3 battles in each group, and most of them ended very quickly. Among them, it was worth mentioning that there was a familiar face to Lin Yi in the mid-stage foundation establishment group, Fei Yongsheng. Chapter 52:10. The tournament continued and soon, it was Ziyu's turn. Letting Lung escape was already embarrassing enough for Xue Jianfeng, and naturally, he had to use this chance to mess with Ziyu. Unfortunately, Ziyu wasn't the same as before, and with a set of instant attacks, she took the opponent's life cleanly. The opponent didn't even have a chance to fight back, and as for Xue Jianfeng's warning, that was pure nonsense. At this point, Lin Yi's group had all obtained the qualifications to participate in the Arcane Trials. As for Xue Jianfeng, who had vowed to make Lin Yi feel the pain of his heart's pain, not only did he get nothing out of it, but he almost lost against Lung Lung. He was a golden core early stage, and he almost got dragged down by a foundation establishment perfection. That was a huge loss of face. I'll let you guys live a little longer. Don't even think about living after the Archaean trials. Looking at the cheering Lin Yi's group, Xue Jianfeng gritted his teeth. He didn't wait for the tournament to end before turning around and leaving with a dark face. He wasn't in a hurry to go back to sulk, but to apologize to the center. The tournament was already over. He had boasted in front of the glasses doctor before, and now he hadn't done anything at all. This wasn't just a problem of making a fool of himself. If the glasses doctor thought that he wasn't useful enough and canceled his priority training, he'd really be coughing up blood. You're finally here, the glasses doctor said in a low voice, a little unhappy. That training competition is the highlight of this period of time, and my every move is being watched. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, it's not convenient for me to leave as I please. Please forgive me. Xue Jianfeng hurriedly tried to remedy the situation. Is that so? But why did we hear that not only did you leave in the middle of it, but you even left for a few days? Dafeng Bro curled his lips. This. Xue Jianfeng suddenly choked. Only then did he realize that someone else must have reported to him. After all, with so many people secretly relying on the center, it would be easy for the bespectacled doctor and brother Dafeng to grasp the situation of the trial. What? Do you still want to continue covering up the fact that you were beaten up by Lung Lung? Are you trying to keep us in the dark? Big Brother Feng coldly snorted as he asked. He did not know about Lin Yi's plan to instigate defection. He was merely unhappy with Xue Jianfeng the traitor. Not only that, the training competition was such a good opportunity, but you didn't do anything at all. Instead, Lin Yi and the others advanced smoothly one by one. How do you explain this? The bespectacled doctor was also extremely dissatisfied. To think that he had listed Xue Jianfeng as a person to focus on nurturing. He didn't expect that this guy would actually be so useless. Now, even he felt that he had lost all face. Xue Jianfeng didn't dare to quibble. He admitted his mistake on the spot without the slightest hesitation, and his attitude was rather sincere. Please calm your anger, sirs. I did not do my job well, and have disappointed you. I deserve death. His attitude stunned Big Brother Feng. In order to confuse him and make him think that he was still trusted, the bespectacled doctor had revealed to him the matter of focusing on nurturing. Big Brother Feng wanted to take this opportunity to trample on Xue Jianfeng. Even if he was to focus on nurturing, he had to find someone more pleasing to the eye. However, Xue Jianfeng's attitude made him unsure of how to kick him when he was down. All right, I'll give you a chance to explain. The bespectacled doctor nodded. Although he was also very disappointed with Xue Jianfeng's incompetence, the name list had already been submitted. He did not want to go back on his word, unless it was absolutely necessary. What's more, Xue Jianfeng's background in the Snow Sword faction was indeed very useful to the center. It was because of this that they treated him differently. Yes, thank you, sirs. Xue Jianfeng felt as if he had been pardoned. The bespectacled doctor's attitude meant that as long as he could give a good reason, he would be able to get away with it. He quickly said, "It's not that I didn't put in the effort in this tournament, but I did everything I could. Threats and promises were used, and the Archaic Alliance disciples who fought with Lin Yi also promised to go all out. But the result was that everyone was completely suppressed from start to finish. There was really no other way." Continue. The bespectacled doctor didn't say anything. Dafeng Bro naturally didn't say anything. Yes, this kind of suppression wasn't just on the surface. It was a direct suppression of the life gate. I don't know how Lin Yi did it, but to be suppressed like this in a fight of the same level, it'd be hard for him not to lose. Xue Jianfeng said respectfully, "If that's the case, then I can't blame it on you." The bespectacled doctor nodded. Xue Jianfeng couldn't fight Lingshan's group himself, after all. The most he could do was let the others use the opportunity to kill him. Failure was something he couldn't do anything about. But you're an early phase golden core. And not only did you fail to kill Lung Lung, you even almost lost to her. You can't deny this, can you? Dafeng Bro frowned. This. Xue Jianfeng's face turned red, and he could only say, this subordinate was indeed careless and underestimated the enemy. I didn't expect that the painted ground imprisonment created by her shattered ice physique would be so powerful. So I suffered a loss. However, this subordinate guarantees that I won't fail next time. Next time? Doffing Bro snorted. An early phase golden core couldn't even handle a foundation establishment full circle. And he still had the face to mention next time? Alright, let bygones be bygones. Since we failed this time, we need to think of a way to make up for it. Do you understand me? The bespectacled doctor interrupted. Thank you for your trust. I can't thank you enough. Xue Jianfeng was overjoyed and quickly said. After the competition ends, the next 2 months will be a collective rest period. Everyone will go into closed-door training. I think Lin Yi's group won't be an exception, so it'll be hard to find a suitable opportunity before the primeval trials. We can only wait for the primeval trials. If that's the case, then we'll wait for the primeval trials. The bespectacled doctor decided. This was something he and Xue Jianfeng had decided on their own. It wasn't an order from the higher-ups. It would be fine if there was a suitable opportunity, but since there wasn't one, there was no need to force it. Yes. Xue Jianfeng nodded. He couldn't help but ask. Then when will the training start? If we wait until the primeval trials, it won't be convenient. Chapter 52:11. That's great. Thank you for the training. Xue Jianfeng was overjoyed. He thought he was done for after making such a fool of himself. He didn't expect the bespectacled doctor to think so highly of him. As long as he could get the opportunity to focus on training, his strength would definitely improve by leaps and bounds again. By then, even Bing Wuqing would be under his feet. This was his dream. Big brother Doffing couldn't help but feel a little helpless. But since the bespectacled doctor had said so, he couldn't say much. He was nominally the leader of this operation. But to put it bluntly, he was just a puppet in name. What troubled him the most now was how to deliver the information to Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he waited for Xue Jianfeng's strength to increase greatly, and waited for an opportunity to strike in the primeval trial, even Lin Yi would suffer a great deal if he was caught off guard. However, if there were no special circumstances, he could only act with the bespectacled doctor. Even if he could move freely, it would not be easy to avoid the Primeval Alliance's disciples and contact Lin Yi. After all, there was no cell phone signal here, so he couldn't make a call even if he wanted to. He was at his wit's end. Fortunately, Big Brother Doffing didn't have a headache for too long. It wasn't because he had the opportunity to go out alone, but because Lin Yi came to look for him. He was about to go to the primeval trial, and he didn't know how long it would take. Lin Yi naturally had to find a way to inform him. Although Big Brother Doffing couldn't be too far away from the bespectacled doctor, there was still some free space, such as taking a dump. Of course, Big Brother Doffing didn't know that Lin Yi would take the initiative to look for him. He was really taking a dump when Lin Yi's voice suddenly came from above his head. Doffing, how have you been? Fuck. Big Brother Doffing was shocked. When he looked up, he didn't see anything. He couldn't help but say suspiciously, "No way? Is it because I've been cooped up in this damn place for too long that I'm having auditory hallucinations? Will I become mentally ill? Do you want me to take you to the mental hospital?" Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. As he spoke, he condensed a physical spirit in front of Big Brother Doffing. "Boss, is it really you?" Big Brother Feng was surprised and overjoyed. He immediately reacted and lowered his voice, grumbling, "Boss, why are you so elusive? You scared the shit out of me." Lin Yi was speechless. Seeing that this guy was about to get close to him without even pulling up his pants, he quickly jumped back in fright. He pinched his nose and frowned. "Can you please wipe your butt first?" Oh. Big Brother Feng picked up a few leaves from the side and rubbed them symbolically. Then, he pulled up his pants without a care in the world. However, Lin Yi's eyelids kept twitching. Fortunately, he wasn't a clean freak. Otherwise, he would have collapsed at the sight of this scene. However, out of psychological effects, he subconsciously took 2 steps back and maintained a safe distance. "Let's talk this out. Just stand there." Ugh. Big Brother Feng's expression was very sad, but the other party's disgust was already written on his face. He was too embarrassed to continue to get close to him, So he quickly threw away the leaves in his hand and said embarrassedly, "Boss, how did you find me? I knew when you came in. I saw your every move. It's just that I wasn't proficient in the spirit state at that time, so I didn't dare to come down and meet you." Lenny smiled. Spirit state? Big Brother Feng was confused. Lenny didn't explain these things to him in detail. Of course, he couldn't understand at his level, but he didn't need to understand too much. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "It's good that you know. I was afraid that you would be kept in the dark and be tricked by these guys. Sure enough, my worries were unnecessary. Boss is the boss. It's all thanks to you keeping an eye on me. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't even know they sneaked in. The consequences would be unimaginable." Lenny sighed. During this time, Big Brother Feng didn't seem to play any role, but in fact, his existence itself was very valuable. Even if Lin Yi had rebelled against Bing Wuqing and the other Archaic Alliance masters, Big Brother Feng's position was still unique. "Hee, no matter what, it's fine as long as I can help, boss." Big Brother Feng smiled carelessly and said, "By the way, recently Dr. Glasses and the others are doing some kind of focused training program. I wonder if boss has noticed?" "Focused training program?" Lenny was taken aback. He had been busy training everyone to deal with the trial. He didn't have time to monitor every move here, so he really didn't know anything about it. He quickly said, "Tell me in detail." "I don't know the specific plan. It was proposed by the bespectacled doctor directly to the higher-ups. I didn't do it myself. I just heard him mention it casually. However, one thing is for sure. The target for training this time is Xue Jianfeng," Brother Dafeng said in detail. "Xue Jianfeng? How can it be him? Shouldn't Bing Wuqing be valued more?" Lenny frowned. Since it was a focused training program, it meant that the center would definitely invest a lot of resources into it. It would be great if it was Bing Wuqing, who was one of them. It would be equivalent to the center working for him for nothing. He didn't expect them to choose Xue Jianfeng. From what Dr. Glasses said, it's probably because of Xue Jianfeng's background in the Snow Sword faction. It would be convenient for the center to do anything in the Archaic Alliance in the future. Big Brother Feng frowned. The higher-ups of the center did not intend to tell him these things clearly, but intentionally or unintentionally revealed them to him through Dr. Glass's mouth. They did not trust him as an outsider, which made him feel a little unnatural, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong at the moment. Sure enough, the center will not let go of this fat piece of archaic underworld. Laney shook his head and laughed. There was no need to think about this at all. The center would definitely copy what they did on Heaven Stage Island to Archaic Underworld. Although this expansion method of the Chamber of Commerce was not very clever, it was indeed successful. Apart from this, there are no other movements recently. The instigating and controlling of the Archaic Alliance's disciples has basically stopped. If we want to go further, we will have to wait for instructions from the higher-ups, Big Brother Feng said. Okay, I got it. Lenny nodded and instructed. I'm going to bring some people to participate in the archaic trials. You stay put and hide. Remember safety first. Unless I tell you to move, you can't move on your own. Don't raise suspicions. Boss, don't worry. I understand, Big Brother Feng promised. Chapter 52:12. Boss is the boss. His methods are so fucking unpredictable, Brother Dafeng praised. Suddenly, Lin Yi's voice came from above. There's something I forgot to tell you. Please tell me, boss. Brother Dafeng immediately stood at attention, looking like he would go through fire and water without hesitation. You stepped on shit. Lin Yi's tone was very complicated. If it wasn't for this, he might be willing to stay a little longer. But now he really couldn't stand it anymore. Fuck. Who the fuck peed and pooped everywhere? Do you have any morals? Brother Dafeng suddenly cursed. Even the bespectacled doctor in the distance heard the commotion and looked puzzled. Lenny ran away in embarrassment, and at the same time he said, That seems to be your own. After leaving, Lenny didn't directly return to the island exclusive to the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island. Instead, he went to the territory of the Snow Sword School and found Bing Wuqing after carefully avoiding everyone's eyes and ears. Bing Wuqing was shocked when she heard Lin Yi's primordial spirit voice transmission. She was in the late golden elixir realm, and had her signature ruthless ice aura. But she didn't notice it at all. She couldn't help but be secretly afraid. Although Lanny was only in the great completion of Foundation establishment, his methods were really unfathomable. Lanny didn't show up on the spot. After all, Shuejianfeng wasn't far away. After the primordial spirit voice transmission, he waited in another secluded place on the island. Bing Wuqing immediately understood. She stood up and walked toward a secluded place. However, when she turned around, she ran into Shuejianfeng. This guy looked very suspicious. Where are you going, senior brother Bing? Why do I need to report to you about what I'm doing? Bing Wuqing glanced at him. He was such a person. Besides, there was a huge gap between their strength. Of course, he didn't need to care about Shuejianfeng's feelings. That's not it. It's just that the two of us work together. Senior brother Bing, you can let me know in advance if you need anything. Maybe I can help? Shuejianfeng said shamelessly. It wasn't because of anything else. He was purely afraid that Bing Wuqing would go to the bespectacled doctor for special training like him. Wouldn't it be a big loss if she took his priority training spot? Bing Wuqing frowned and said, I'm going in seclusion. Seclusion? Shuejianfeng was still skeptical until he confirmed that Bing Wuqing wasn't heading in the direction of the bespectacled professor. Only then did he feel relieved. He was secretly pleased with himself. Go ahead and cultivate in seclusion. When you're done and come out, I'll see if you still have the guts to put on that dead face of yours. After making sure that Shuejianfeng had not followed her secretly, Bing Wuqing then went to look for Lin Yi. She bowed respectfully and asked, May I know what instructions the higher-ups have for me? It's nothing. I just found out that the center is going to focus on nurturing Shuejianfeng. So I'm just informing you. Lin Yi said indifferently. There's such a thing. Bing Wuqing was startled when she heard that. When she thought of Shuejianfeng's strange behavior just now, she suddenly realized that this brat was trying to get special treatment behind her back. A wave of anger rose in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She said in a low voice, Your subordinate is slow and didn't realize it in time. Please punish me. Punish? Lin Yi laughed when he heard that. He casually threw 2 elixirs to her and said playfully, All right then. Take these 2 poisonous pills as punishment, and kill yourself as an apology. This, Bing Wuqing's expression changed. She struggled and hesitated for a moment, but then she took the elixirs and stuffed them into her mouth. She had no intention of resisting at all. Of course, she knew that resistance was futile. After all, she still had Lin Dongfang's goo in her body. If she dared to resist, she would definitely die a horrible death. Lin Yi was a little stunned when he saw that. Bing Wuqing's action couldn't be said to be very loyal, but at least it showed that she was very adaptable. It was easy to deal with people like her, as long as she always maintained an advantage in terms of strength. At the last moment, Lin Yi finally stopped Bing Wuqing. He laughed and said, Why don't you take a look at what these elixirs are? How dare you stuff them into your mouth like that? Bing Wuqing was shocked when she heard that. Only then did she take a closer look at the 2 elixirs in her hand. When she came back to her senses, she was instantly stunned. She cried out in shock, Supreme-grade gold cores? If you really eat both of them together, let's not talk about whether you can take it or not. Even if you can, you'll definitely regret it to death, Lin Yi said, amused. I forgot myself. Bing Wuqing was a little embarrassed, which was rare for her. Just as Lin Yi had said, if she really ate these 2 supreme-grade gold cores together, she would definitely regret it to death. She could have broken through to gold core perfected, but if she ate them together, she might only be able to reach the peak of gold core late stage. It's nothing. If even your behavior is considered to have forgotten yourself, I reckon no one in the world can keep their composure. Lin Yi shook his head. Bing Wuqing's actions just now had truly given him a fright. Although he couldn't completely rule out the possibility that she was acting, that kind of reaction wasn't something an ordinary person could pull off. He had to admit that she was indeed a talent. Thank you so much for your guidance. Bing Wuqing clenched the 2 supreme-grade gold cores tightly, her eyes shining with excitement. She couldn't help but feel excited. These 2 elixirs were almost equivalent to guaranteeing her a 2-level upgrade in an extremely short period of time. It was a good thing that she couldn't even dream of. Since you're my subordinate, I naturally have to give you some benefits. Otherwise, if even trash like Xue Jianfeng rides over your head, wouldn't it be very embarrassing for me? Lin Yi said with a smile. Rest assured, I will definitely keep a close eye on Xue Jianfeng and not let him get out of control. Bing Wuqing understood tacitly. Very well. In that case, you should go into seclusion. I'll take my leave first. As he spoke, Lin Yi transformed into the form of a primordial spirit and disappeared. Bing Wuqing stayed where she was for a moment. No one knew what she was thinking about. Suddenly, a cold light flashed in her eyes, and she immediately sat down cross-legged to adjust her condition. There was still 1.5 months before the start of the primeval trials. If she wanted to completely digest the medicinal effects of these 2 supreme-grade gold cores, she had to make the best use of her time. At the same time, Xue Jianfeng, who was on the other side, inexplicably shuddered. Then, he went to look for the bespectacled doctor. The long-awaited intensive training was finally about to begin. Chapter 52:13. Even with Lin Yi's protection, Lin Yi couldn't guarantee everyone's safety. After all, Xue Jianfeng, who'd gone through intensive training, was a completely different person. He was a threat that couldn't be underestimated. And so in the last month and a half, Ling Shan and the others went into closed-door training. With the supreme-grade foundation and foundation-breaking pills that Lin Yi had prepared for them, even if they couldn't level up, they could at least solidify their strength and protect themselves. As for Lin Yi, it was a bit troublesome for himself. Other than trying to figure out the tricks and uses of the half-primordial spirit, it seemed like breaking through to foundation full mastery was as hard as reaching the heavens. He didn't know why, but no matter how hard he tried, he was always lacking something. If it was someone else, they might think that they were just a thin line away from success and would try everything they could. But Lin Yi himself was a mystic early-phase practitioner, after all. He had a lot of experience when it came to things like breakthroughs, and he knew that he was missing something. Forcing it would only backfire. But the problem was, what was missing? Or was it that the limit of the primordial spirit was foundation full mastery? He didn't know, but the former was more or less possible. But if it was the latter, then there was nothing he could do. Even Lin Yi couldn't do anything about it. Lin Yi felt helpless. Although the half-primordial spirit state was a great trump card, it wasn't a long-term plan. Even someone like Xue Jianfeng was a golden core practitioner now, and he'd be even stronger in the primordial trials. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was stuck at foundation full mastery, and he couldn't make any progress. Lin Yi really didn't have the strength to do what he wanted. 1.5 months later, everyone was gathered by Enchanting again, but they were divided into 2 groups. One of them was eager to try, because they were about to start the primordial trials that only happened once in 1,000 years. The other group was depressed, because they were the losers of the primordial trials. No matter how rare the primordial trials was, it had nothing to do with them anymore. Everyone, the year-long training in the mortal world has officially come to an end today. Although many things happened in the process, it's finally over. Congratulations! Enchanting said loudly, and nodded to Lin Yi gratefully. That's right, Lin Yi. If it wasn't for Lin Yi, the Grand Master, who turned the tide, it was hard to say what would have happened between the Primordial Alliance and the Cultivators' Alliance in the secular world. Perhaps the secular world would have been plunged into misery and suffering, and the Primordial Alliance would have lost a bunch of disciples. The situation would be out of control, and Enchanting, as the Grand Master who led the team, would have to bear the blame. The others didn't comment on this. For most of the Primordial Alliance's disciples, the secular world experiential trials was just a recreational activity. Apart from seeing the colorful world of the secular world, they didn't expect to gain any substantial gains. In fact, most of them went out for a walk at the beginning, and after that, they stayed in the transit islands to cultivate. Instead of saying that they came out for the secular world experiential trials, it was better to say that they came out for closed-door training. Since the secular world experiential trials has ended, according to the order of the Primordial Alliance's higher-ups, everyone should go back to their respective places. Enchanting paused and announced, "First of all, the disciples who were eliminated in the grand competition will be teleported back to the primordial underworld and report back to your respective sections. No one is allowed to stay here." Everyone had expected this result. Although they were reluctant to leave the transit islands for the unique spiritual chi, it was an order from the Primordial Alliance's higher-ups. They didn't have the guts to defy it, so they could only agree in unison. Under Enchanting's supervision, everyone entered the teleportation formation. With a flash of white light, they disappeared in the teleportation formation. After that, Enchanting turned to Lin Yi and the others and said, "As for the rest of you, you are the elites who have passed the grand competition and successfully obtained the qualifications to participate in the trial. The place you will be going next is naturally the legendary primordial trial." "Martial Uncle Enchanting, where is this primordial trial that you mentioned?" someone asked impatiently. "Yeah, you made us dig for so long in the underwater spirit jade mine, saying that it's to prepare for the primordial trial, but I don't see a third teleportation formation." The others followed. 2 teleportation formations. One was connected to the secular world, and the other to the primordial underworld. Where was the third one? "There is, but it hasn't appeared yet." Enchanting pretended to be profound and smiled. "It hasn't appeared yet?" Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. Could it be that the teleportation formation could be hidden? Everyone calmed down. According to the Primordial Alliance's higher-ups, the teleportation formation will appear today. Just wait patiently, Enchanting said and sat down. Lin Yi smiled faintly and sat down as well. The others looked at each other, although their hearts were itching like a cat scratching them. Since Enchanting wanted to keep them in suspense, there was nothing they could do. They could only sit down and wait. At this time, Duan Muyu suddenly walked over and sat down beside Lin Yi under everyone's surprised gaze. Under normal circumstances, when a woman sat next to a man, she would be embarrassed and blushed. However, her expression was calm and composed, without the slightest bit of embarrassment. On the contrary, she was more elegant and calm than most men. "Brother Lin, thank you for your help last time." Duan Muyu cupped her hands. "You're welcome. It's nothing." Lin Yi smiled faintly and shook his head. "It might be nothing to you, but it's no small matter to me. If it wasn't for Brother Lin, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to participate in the primordial trials, and would have to return home like the others," Duan Muyu said seriously. He wasn't just saying that out of politeness. If it weren't for Lin Yi treating her frostbite, just the frostbite from the shattered ice prison mirror, would have given her a headache for a few months. Let alone participating in the Archean trials. She might still be busy treating her wounds right now. "So, Miss Duan Muyu has fully recovered?" Lin Yi asked curiously. The weak period of rejuvenation withered leaves was 3 months. Although Duan Muyu used an incomplete version, it had only been 1.5 months. It was still unknown whether she had fully recovered. Maybe this woman was taking the risk to participate in the primordial trials. "You can say that." Duan Muyu's answer was ambiguous. After all, they were not familiar with each other. If she casually told Lin Yi, it would be too immature. Chapter 52:14. They chatted to kill time, as they waited for the moment Enchanting was talking about. They waited for an entire day, and nothing happened even when the sky turned dark. There wasn't even a shadow of the so-called third portal. "Uncle Enchanting, where is this third portal you're talking about? Is it just a legend?" The people couldn't help but wonder. That Enchanting was a bit troubled himself. But this third portal was something recorded in the archaic pugilistic world. It definitely wasn't a legend. But could it be that the Archaic Alliance had miscalculated the date of the portal's appearance? That was hard to say. Enchanting's reaction made the group even more suspicious. They'd been looking forward to this once-in-a-thousand-years trial for a whole year. And they'd even given it their all to pass the toughest test in history. But now they couldn't even see the shadow of the third portal. If this was just a legend, how could they take it? Just when everyone was thinking about it, Ziyu suddenly said, The moon tonight is so round and so close. Everyone was taken aback when they heard that. They looked up and started to discuss among themselves. For some reason, the moon tonight was indeed very round and close to them. If it was just round, it would be fine. After all, the moon was waxing and waning. Even if this was a transit point, there was nothing strange about it. However, the moon tonight was ridiculously close. It felt like they could touch it if they stretched out their hands. It was almost pressing down on everyone's face. This was something that no one had ever seen before. "Look, the tide's receding so fast," someone shouted. Everyone looked over, and the tide was indeed receding fast. In just an instant, the water level dropped by a huge chunk, and there were no signs of it slowing down at all. The tide was receding faster and faster, and in the end, it sounded like it was going to destroy the world. It was truly shocking. It's actually connected. Everyone was stunned by the scene in front of them. This was originally a transit island, but after the unprecedented turbulent ebb tide, the shallow sea that originally separated the islands had all turned into land, and they were all connected. Isn't that the spirit jade mine under the sea? It's much easier to mine now. We don't have to come up for air every once in a while, and it's so slow. If we go mining now, we can probably get 3 pieces a day, the group discussed. However, Enchanting ignored the crowd's discussion. Instead, he walked toward the new land that appeared out of nowhere with a complicated and abstruse drawing in his hand. Everyone didn't know what was going on, so they stood up and followed him. They couldn't help but ask, "Marshal Uncle Enchanting, is there any mystery in this? The secret is right here." Enchanting suddenly stopped and pointed at the round black stone he was stepping on. The group walked up and looked at it. Other than being a bit harder, there didn't seem to be anything special about it. They looked at each other. "What's so special about it?" Enchanting smiled mysteriously without saying a word. After comparing it with his abstruse drawing, he turned around and walked to another place. Soon, he found another piece of black stone, which was exactly the same as the previous one. Then he found the third, the fourth, the fifth. In the end, he found a total of 72 identical black stones in a large area around him. Furthermore, they seemed to have formed an inexplicable and mysterious spell formation. "What are these?" The group was confused. "Black stone plum blossom formation." Enchanting smiled while stroking his beard. "Black stone plum blossom formation? What is this thing? Is it also a type of teleportation array?" Everyone was confused by what they saw. "No, but we'll see the third teleportation formation soon. Come everyone, help me. Put 3 pieces of spiritual jade on each black stone," Enchanting said. A moment later, 3 pieces of spiritual jade were placed on each of the 72 black stones, according to Enchanting's instruction. At first there was no movement, but soon they began to glow. Then, an invisible gust of wind rose into the sky, sweeping away all the sand in an instant. The entire ground sank by 7 to 8 meters. The group was shocked. The black stones they saw earlier were just a small part of it. It turned out that there were 72 black stone pillars, and there was an ancient teleportation formation among them. The third teleportation formation. The group was overjoyed. One of them said regretfully, "If we knew we could find the teleportation formation by removing the sand, we wouldn't have wasted so many spiritual jades. We could have saved them with just a little effort." It was not difficult for them to remove the sand, but more than 200 spiritual jades were a huge sum in the ancient underworld. Many of them had never seen so many spiritual jades in their lives. "You're overthinking. The black stone plum blossom formation is an ancient maze. If you don't activate it with spiritual jades, you won't be able to find the teleportation formation, even if you clean up all the sand." Enchanting shook his head. "Since we've found the teleportation formation, let's start the teleportation." Shui Jianfeng suddenly stood up and said, ever since he came back from the center's intensive training, his temperament had changed a lot. He became more reserved and deep. He no longer had the arrogant attitude he used to have. Instead, he was more like a venomous snake that kept spitting out its tongue, as if it was going to devour someone at any time. Hearing his words, The group who were still immersed in shock immediately came to their senses. They became impatient and wanted to be the first to rush into the teleportation formation. All right, then everyone enter in order. There's no need to hurry. There are only 43 people in total. With the scale of this ancient teleportation formation, it's enough to teleport everyone in one go. Enchanting immediately led the group into the teleportation formation one by one. 43. This was the total number of people participating in the archaic trials. And this was also because of Lin Yi's group. Otherwise, the number of people would be even lower. People valued quality over quantity. This was the unified thinking of the Archaic Alliance. They didn't need to let every disciple of the Archaic Alliance get the opportunity. They just needed to make sure that the most deserving disciples didn't miss it. Chapter 52:15. So you're saying that the Spirit River might be fake? Someone asked. I don't think so. After all, almost all the ancient books related to this trial ground have mentioned about the River of Consciousness. However, it's hard to tell what exactly the River of Consciousness is. You can only explore it with your own eyes. Maybe it's really a legendary River of Consciousness, or maybe it's a dangerous River of Consciousness. Everyone just be careful. Enchanting said. The group looked at each other. The thing they were looking forward to the most was the legendary Spirit River. Enchanting's words were like pouring a bucket of cold water on their heads. No matter what, take care of yourselves. Anyway, take care of yourselves. I'll stay here for a month after you're teleported over. If anything happens to you, you can always find a way to teleport back here. However, if you wait for a month, the tide will rise again. By then, you'll have to find another one-way teleportation formation to return to the primordial underworld. As for the map of the one-way teleportation formation, each of you will have a copy. However, it might be different from the actual map, Enchanting reminded. In other words, within a month, everyone still had the chance to back out if the situation was bad. After all, this training ground was only opened once every 1,000 years, and no one knew how it was now. If they were to directly cut off everyone's path of retreat with danger everywhere, causing all the genius disciples to be annihilated, then that would be a huge joke. However, after a month, he wouldn't even have the chance to change his mind. No matter how dangerous the situation would be, he would have to brace himself and find another one-way teleportation array. Otherwise, he would be trapped in the trial grounds waiting for death. Enchanting started arranging large amounts of spirit jade to activate the portal. Lin Yi, Lingshan, and the others looked at each other. According to Enchanting, it wouldn't be easy for them to come back from the ancient Jianghu. If they couldn't come back through the portal, they would have to go back to the ancient Jianghu. The time it would take would be unimaginable. It might take years or even decades. Fortunately, they were mentally prepared for this. They had told their friends and family beforehand, so they could take care of each other. It wouldn't be a big deal even if it took a long time. Everything was ready. The portal was finally activated. A white light flashed, and the scene in front of Lin Yi and the others changed. Why is it so dark? The group thought that their eyes weren't used to it yet, but it was still pitch black after a while. They started complaining. Even if it was pitch black, there shouldn't be no light at all. Don't panic, it's a cave. Lin Yi comforted them and reminded Lingshan and the others. You can use your spirit sense if you can't see with your eyes. This is something you need to get used to. After reaching a certain level, basically everyone would use their divine sense as their primary means of perception. If they really relied on their eyes, it would be very difficult to even keep up with their opponent's movement technique, let alone fight against them. It really is a cave, and it's very narrow and deep. Lung Lung nodded. She was the second strongest person in the group, and was also a foundation perfection practitioner. Naturally, her reactions were faster than Lingshan and the others. The others also reacted, using their divine senses to sense the surrounding environment. Although there was no visual effect of color, their perception of shapes and silhouettes was more detailed and distinct. Why would the ancients put the portal in such a deep cave? It's scary. The group was speechless. No matter what, let's get out of here first. After saying that, Someone took the lead and walked towards the entrance of the cave. The others didn't have any intention of staying here and followed suit one after another. Only Lenny stayed and studied the portal underfoot. The structure of this portal was exactly the same as the one in the transit islands. In theory, it could be activated with enough spirit jade. But as Exionigia said, the place would be covered in seawater again a month later, and the black stone plum blossom formation would be activated again. It would be hard to say if the portal could still be used then. Right at this moment, a shrill and miserable howl suddenly rang out not far ahead. What followed was a flurry of panic. Everyone who had gone out earlier had actually all fled back, except for two people. One was Xue Jianfeng, and the other was Bing Wuqing. Everyone be careful. Lenny gestured for the group to form a defensive formation. This was something they practiced for all sorts of dangers they might face in the primordial trials. But this formation was more than enough for defense, not enough for offense. It only made them a little safer. The group didn't dare Tari. Something that could scare so many elites of the Archaic Alliance this badly had to be a big threat. Sure enough, after the people at the front fled back, a group of fire-like existences also whistled and chased after them. Moreover, there were many of them. If not 10,000, there were at least 8,000. What's this? Ling Shan and the others were startled at the sight. These things were extremely fast, covering the skies in the blink of an eye. One of the Foundation Establishment primeval disciples, who was a bit slower, got caught up and was dismembered into a pile of meat in an instant, his body still sizzling and smoking. It was a horrible sight to behold. Fire bats. Lenny blurted out. He'd seen these things in the Book of Omniscient on Sky Island before. They were extremely bloodthirsty spirit beasts, and while they weren't strong individually, at most at the early phase of Foundation establishment, they always moved in groups. Now that there were tens of thousands of them, the threat they posed wasn't something normal Foundation establishment practitioners could handle. The two Golden Core experts, Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, were the strongest among them. If the two of them were willing to go all out, dealing with this flock of fire bats would not be a problem. Unfortunately, the two of them had no intention of doing so. Instead, they directly passed through the flock of fire bats and left, leaving only a group of Foundation establishment experts trapped here. The swarm of fire bats closed in. With the previous example right in front of their eyes, everyone didn't dare to have any thoughts of holding back their strength. They hastily used the martial skills they were most proficient in to counterattack. Rumbling sounds rang out incessantly, and the scene became extremely lively for a moment. However, the bats were too small, and they were extremely fast and agile. The group's messy attacks couldn't hit them, and they could only cover their heads and run. Chapter 52:16. Firebat King? What does the Firebat King look like? Everyone quickly shouted. The thousands of fire bats here looked almost the same. Even if they lined up one by one for them to look at, they probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference, let alone in this situation. The strongest one is the Firebat King, Lenny said in a low voice. It was indeed difficult to tell from their appearance, but one thing was for sure. The Firebat King's strength must be above all the fire bats, or else it would not be able to control the entire flock of fire bats. That being said, it was not easy to find the strongest fire bat among the tens of thousands of fire bats. With the divine sense of these Foundation establishment stage experts, it was difficult to even lock onto the position of these rapidly moving fire bats, let alone carefully distinguish the strength of each fire bat. This was as difficult as ascending to heaven for everyone, but it was a piece of cake for Lin Yi. He found the Firebat King's tracks in an instant. Most of the other fire bats had strength comparable to the early stage of the Foundation establishment. The stronger ones were at most comparable to the peak of the early stage of the Foundation establishment. However, this Firebat King, which looked exactly the same, had strength above the middle stage of the Foundation establishment. The speed of ordinary fire bats was already extremely fast, so fast that everyone could not react at all. However, this Firebat King's speed was several times faster. Although there was a residual flame arc wherever it passed, it could not be determined at all. Perhaps it was right in front of them a moment ago, But in the next moment, it was already hundreds of meters away. Even the flame arc it left behind could not catch up with such terrifying speed. It would be fine if that was all, but the key was that this fire bat king was very cautious. Every time it came in contact, it would retreat immediately. Usually, it would quickly hide back into the flock of fire bats after just one bite, making it impossible for anyone to chase after it. With Lin Yi's reminder, the others could not react in time, but two people had noticed the fire bat king's tracks. When it attacked again, the two of them attacked almost at the same time. They were Cold and Duan Muyu. In terms of strength, the two women were already top-notch among the Foundation establishment experts. It should have been a piece of cake for them to deal with this fire bat king. However, this time, the two women's attacks missed, and they almost hurt each other accidentally. Fortunately, they stopped in time. So fast, Lung Lung and Duan Muyu exclaimed at the same time. The fire bat king might not be considered powerful in other aspects, but its speed was truly invincible. Even the vital energy of its moves could not catch up to it. What could the crowd do to it? Fortunately, there was still Lin Yi. Before the fire bat king could escape back into the group of fire bats, a blue electric arc had already struck it. Lin Yi's other moves might not be able to do anything to it, but no matter how fast it was, how could it compare to the electric arc? With Lin Yi's current strength at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm, it was impossible for him to completely unleash his signature move. The 5 elements 8 trigrams killing aura and thunder burial were both wishful thinking. Being able to barely use the 5 elements 8 trigrams killing aura was already something he was secretly happy about. Other than that, he could just barely mobilize some of the power of thunder and lightning. However, there was no way he could use thunder burial. It was also impossible for him to use Thousand Thunder Explosion. An electric arc was not a threat to an expert of the same level. At most, it would numb the body for a moment. However, it was just right to deal with the Fire Bat King, that was comparable to a mid-stage Foundation establishment realm expert. As expected, after the Fire Bat King was hit by the electric arc, its body trembled and fell on the spot. Although it did not die immediately, it struggled on the ground and seemed to be able to fly. However, the crowd would not give it another chance. Lung Lung went up and struck the Fire Bat King with her palm, freezing it to death on the spot. This was called the Broken Ice Palm. Although it was not an ultimate move like the Painted Prison or the Ice Prison Mirror, it was still a unique palm technique that was fused with the Broken Ice Aura. It was Lung Lung's usual move against the enemy. As soon as the Fire Bat King died, the group of fire bats was instantly thrown into chaos. After losing their leader, they instinctively scattered in all directions. Just a moment ago they were everywhere, but in the blink of an eye, they were all gone. Phew! The group breathed heavily, their hearts filled with fear. At least 3 of them had died to the fire bats, and the rest were injured. If it wasn't for Lin Yi finding the Fire Bat King and killing it, there would have been more of them dead. Most of them would have died here. This was indeed the Archean trials that happened once in 1,000 years. They had left a deep impression on the group. Alright, let's go, Lin Yi said. Lingshan and the others nodded, but the other Archean Alliance disciples were scared out of their wits by the fire bats. They all hid behind Lin Yi's group, so that if anything happened, the first to die would be Lin Yi's group, not them. A bunch of scum. Chen Tian curled his lips softly. If it weren't for Lin Yi, they'd be dead by now. Not only did he not say a word of thanks, but he was even hiding behind them with ulterior motives, using them as scapegoats. He was speechless. That's right, Lin Yi bro shouldn't have killed that Fire Bat King. We'll charge out ourselves and let them play with the fire bats. Ziyu humphed. Haha, then we're probably done for. If we're lucky, we might be able to teleport back. But if we're slow, we'll end up like those 3. A pile of meat on the ground. Yu Bing snickered. The others all grinned. The Archean Alliance disciples weren't happy with what they said, but they knew they were in the wrong. They didn't have the face to say anything, otherwise, Lin Yi would force them to walk in front. They didn't have the guts to do that. Not long later, the group finally walked out of the cave, and their eyes widened into a lush forest. Thank goodness we're finally out, Everyone was overjoyed to see this. Although they knew that this training ground that only appeared once in 1,000 years would definitely be filled with dangers, and that there might be monsters that were even more ferocious and frightening than the flock of fire bats hidden within. This was human nature. There was always an innate fear towards this kind of dark and narrow cave. After experiencing the threat of the flock of fire bats, this fear had been magnified infinitely, causing them to not want to stay even a moment longer. Why are there 3 paths here? Someone called out suddenly. The group only reacted then, looking at each other. The map Exanigia gave them was very sketchy, and not only was there no markings for the fire bat's cave, there was only one path to exit the teleportation formation, but there were 3 paths in front of them, 3 stone paths that weren't too wide or too narrow. There were weeds everywhere, but the paths were clear. Chapter 52:17. Plus, even if that was the case, these 3 stone paths should have disappeared after 1,000 years of weathering. How could they still be here? They couldn't say that these stone paths were reinforced by some special formation, could they? It wasn't impossible, but it wasn't very likely. In comparison, Linny was more inclined to believe that there were other people in this place. Perhaps there were natives here that few people knew about, or perhaps there were trial takers who teleported here from other places. Normal people wouldn't think of this, but for someone like Lin Yi who came back from Sky Stage Island, it made sense. After all, no one said that this teleportation formation was only connected to the transfer islands. Maybe it was connected to Sky Stage Island as well? But no matter what, since they were already here, they could only take it one step at a time. Right, where's Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng? Someone asked. The others all shook their heads. These 2 used their golden core stage strength to ignore the threat of the fire bats, rushing out early. They couldn't even be seen now. Do you even need to ask? They couldn't wait to go to the River of Consciousness. They wouldn't stay here and wait for us, would they? Someone said. Not necessarily. This is a once in 1,000 years, the River of Consciousness. It's rare for us to come here. So we'd be idiots if we just went to the River of Consciousness. We'd be missing out on a lot of good things. Someone laughed. If that's the case, then why are we wasting time here? Let's go. The group couldn't wait to set off, but when they saw the 3 paths in front of them, they all paused and looked at each other before turning their attention to Lin Yi. What? You want me, Lin Yi bro, to open the path for you? You're too despicable. Ziyu said angrily. Everyone was a little embarrassed that their thoughts had been exposed. That was indeed what they were thinking. Other than Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, the 2 golden core stage cultivators, Lin Yi was the strongest. Just like what had happened just now, in this primeval trial ground where danger lurked everywhere. Only by following Lin Yi closely would they be able to ensure their safety. Haha, you're wrong. I just wanted to see which path Brother Lin would choose. I don't want to pick the same path as me. Someone walked out from the crowd, smiling faintly. It was the young master of the Thousand Blades sect, Ling Tianyu. Me too. Duanmuyu smiled faintly as well. Only then did everyone understand. No wonder the 2 of them had been silent all this while. It turned out that they had been planning this. Of course, if they could follow behind Lin Yi, it would be much safer. But at the same time, if they encountered anything good, it would be snatched away by Lin Yi's group. They wouldn't even be able to get a sip of the soup, let alone the meat. I see. Then I'll take my leave. Lin Yi nodded to the 2. These 2 were the people he looked up to the most in the Archaic Alliance. This was good too. There would be less conflict if they each chose a path. It wasn't a bad thing. After exchanging greetings, Lin Yi led Lingshan and the others to the stone path on the left. None of the 3 paths were marked on the map. No one knew where they would go. He just picked one randomly. Seeing this, Ling Tianyu smiled and immediately chose another path to take the lead. Duanmuyu chose the 3rd path, leaving the rest of the people to look at each other in dismay and hesitation. Other than Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, who were nowhere to be found, these 3 paths each had a leader. Of course, Lin Yi's group was the strongest. Not only did they have Lin Yi, they also had Cold, a peak-level foundation establishment perfection. Other than Lingshan and the others, while most of them were only at the early phase, with 2 or 3 at the early phase peak. None of them were easy to deal with, and most importantly, they were extremely united. The others couldn't compete with them at all. Other than that, Ling Tianyu and Duanmuyu were about the same. The former was only late phase peak, but he was a genius with 1,000 blades. Other than a freak like Lin Yi, he was practically invincible. Duanmuyu, on the other hand, was a little less famous, but his strength wasn't to be underestimated either. Compared to Lin Yi's group, they were obviously much weaker. Soon, everyone made their decision. Most of them chose Ling Tianyu and Duanmuyu's paths, and only 3 people chose Lin Yi's path. Compared to the possibility of obtaining a fortuitous encounter, these people obviously cared more about their personal safety. They didn't have any extravagant hopes for the other fortuitous encounters in this ancient trial, except for the river of divine knowledge. Even if Lin Yi's group had a lot of people, and they could take all the treasures and fortunes in front of them, they couldn't possibly take the entire river of consciousness. Could they? They didn't have a lot of people in the first place, and this split made them even weaker. But this didn't affect Lin Yi's group at all. As long as they supported each other, that was enough. They wouldn't be happy if all the other Archaic Alliance disciples followed them. Not only would they have to guard against all sorts of dangers and mishaps in the trials, but they would also have to guard against the traitors behind them. It was a headache just thinking about it, and it was much better to have peace and quiet like this. They walked peacefully for almost an hour, and gradually, even Ling Shan and the others started to feel that something wasn't right. Linny bro, why do I feel like this place is weird? Like something's watching us? Ziyu curled up as she observed the surroundings suspiciously. Everything was still a lush forest, but it didn't feel like that at all. She couldn't tell what exactly was wrong. Yeah, I feel like this place is weird too. Lingshan nodded. Yes it is. Lung Lung said the same. Her spirit sense wasn't as strong as Lin Yi's, but it was much stronger than everyone else's. This feeling of something being off was even more obvious. Linny looked at everyone and said in a low voice, You're right, we're being watched by something, but we don't know what it is exactly yet. Be careful, we'll find out soon. Understood. Everyone nodded. Chapter 52:18. Fortunately, the 3 of them didn't have to be on edge for too long. A sharp whistle came from the sky and 3 black shadows rapidly approached. The 3 disciples of the Archaic Alliance didn't even have time to react before they were snatched away. The strongest among them was at the peak of mid-foundation establishment, but from start to finish, they didn't have the slightest ability to resist. They became prey through and through. What the hell is that? Chen Tian and the others jumped in shock. It was only now that they got a clear look at the 3 shadows. They were all slender birds, and while they weren't as big as the golden-eyed eagles Linny had seen before, they weren't small either, standing at least 3 meters tall. It wouldn't have been a big deal if that was all, but the faces of these 3 birds were actually 3 human faces, male and female. They seemed to be able to communicate with each other, but the more it was like that, the more panicked they got. Ling Shan and the other girls paled in fright, quickly hiding behind Lin Yi. Even Cold, a foundation perfection like her, was no exception. This kind of fear had nothing to do with strength or weakness. The key was that the other party's bird-bodied appearance was far too bizarre. Especially to humans, it was probably more horrifying and terrifying than any hideous thing. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Gomong, a bird's body and a human's face? This was something that only existed in ancient mythologies, and he didn't expect to see one in the archaic trials, that only happened once every 1,000 years. This was unbelievable. This image seems to be Gomong. Could those ancient myths and legends be real? Chen Tian and the others were tongue-tied. They were all practitioners, and it was because of this that they knew that myths and legends were completely different from reality. But now, even Gomong had appeared. Was that still a myth? Who knows? Lin Yi was speechless. These 3 Gomong's appearance had a huge impact on everyone, and it was as if their worldview had been flipped upside down. In that short moment of silence, the 3 Gomangs had already devoured the corpses in their hands, but they still looked like they hadn't had enough. Their greedy eyes quickly landed on Lin Yi and the others, making their scalps go numb. Haha, looks like they're not full yet. Lin Yi laughed coldly. He was someone who'd been through a lot, after all, and Gomang's horrifying appearance only made him feel a little apprehensive. Once he calmed down, Gomang was no different from a normal spirit beast to him. He'd kill him when he needed to. Plus, these 3 Gomangs weren't that strong. They were much stronger than the fire bats at the beginning, but they were at the level of a Foundation establishment practitioner at most. They couldn't compare to the spirit beasts Lin Yi had seen on Sky Class Island at all. That may be the case, but judging from how effortlessly they killed a Foundation establishment peak mid-phase practitioner, each of these Gomang weren't weaker than a Foundation establishment practitioner at all. They were a lethal threat to Ling Shan and the others. The 3 Gomangs tilted their heads and talked to each other. Everyone was confused, and Shintian couldn't help but ask, what language are they talking about? Of course, they're discussing who to eat first. Fatty Lai, you have more meat, so you'll be the first to get eaten. Ziyu plucked up the courage to tease him. She was scared quite a bit, but she'd always been brave. Other than looking a little scary, the 3 Gomangs weren't that scary. After all, Lin Yi was here. That's not necessarily true. I have more meat, but fat doesn't taste good. You girls, on the other hand, have soft skin and tender flesh. You should be more worried. Fatty Lai said with a smile. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile when he heard that. He'd been worried that the 3 Gomang would scare the hell out of them, and it'd be troublesome if something went wrong. But it seemed like he'd been worrying for nothing. Everyone's mental fortitude was much better than he'd expected. The 3 Gomang chattered for a long time, before finally coming to an agreement. Suddenly, they charged into the sky as the group formed a defensive formation, as though they were facing a formidable foe. However, the outcome was out of everyone's expectations. They just left without any intention of touching them. The group couldn't help but look at each other relieved. It was hard to say what would happen if they really fought the 3 Gomangs. Only Lin Yi didn't let his guard down at all. He was still using his divine sense to scan the surroundings. After a while, his lips curled up. Playing this kind of game with us, going away and coming back. They're really smart. Going away and coming back? They're back. Everyone was alarmed when they heard that. Although they weren't as horrified as they were in the beginning, the 3 Gomang's oppressive and ferocious auras were real. It would be a lie to say that they weren't nervous. To them, these 3 were definitely ferocious creatures. They're not back. They never left. That was just a trick to confuse us. Lin Yi explained. His divine sense covered a wide range. And it would be strange if he couldn't even lock onto Gomang, who was only at the perfected level of Foundation establishment. So cunning. Everyone hurriedly maintained their defensive formation, guarding against the 3 Gomangs, as though they were facing a formidable foe. Even a peak mid-stage Foundation establishment expert had become their food, much less their meager strength. If they did not form a defensive formation, they probably wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. After a while, 2 black shadows shot out from the forest, pincer attacking the group from the left and right. It was the 2 Gomangs they'd seen just now. Lung Lung! Lin Yi shouted as he faced the Gomang on his left. At the same time, Lung Lung faced the Gomang on his right in tacit understanding. 2 fists couldn't fight 4 hands, and Lin Yi's strength was only at Foundation establishment perfection after all. He could handle 1, but 2 at the same time was a different story. He needed Lung Lung to take the brunt of the attack. Otherwise, if Ling Shan and the others were to face Gomang's ambush head-on, the consequences would be dire even with the formation. Chapter 52:19. How is this possible? Lung Lung couldn't help but be shocked. The ice-shattering aura was the basis of all her strength. If even her ice-shattering aura couldn't be of any use, then it would be very difficult for her to deal with this monster. Its feathers are too thick. Ling Shan and the others quickly reminded her from behind. Unless Gomang charged in, they wouldn't dare to attack recklessly. They could only use this method to help. Lung Lung only reacted now. The opponent's feathers were very thick, and the outermost layer was as hard as armor. Even if she was hit by the ice-shattering palm, the ice-shattering aura wouldn't be able to penetrate her body. Naturally, it wouldn't have any substantial effect. Since hitting the wings was useless, then she'd change to other areas, especially those with sparse feathers. For example, the opponent's creepy human face. Lung Lung made up her mind, and immediately used her ice-shattering palm to greet the opponent's face. Surprisingly, Gomang didn't even try to block it. Instead, he wore a very human-like smile on his face. When Lung Lung's ice-shattering palm was about to land on his face, he suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a green poisonous gas. Wherever the poisonous gas passed through, even the rocks were corroded into a bottomless hole. It was fortunate that Cold Lung's reaction was fast enough to withdraw her hand in time. She managed to avoid the green poisonous gas by a hair's breadth. This thing is too cunning. Everyone was dumbfounded. Although they knew that many spirit beasts had extraordinary intelligence, they tended to be straightforward. There weren't many that liked to scheme, and there were even fewer like Gomang, who held back his strength to backstab others. Lung Lung was also shocked. After witnessing the strength of the opponent's poisonous gas, she immediately gave up on the idea of attacking the opponent's face. The opponent's face wasn't a weakness that could be exploited, but a trap that was meant to lure people into it. For a moment, Lung Lung was at a loss. Fortunately, she had the strength of a foundation establishment perfection. As long as she was careful, Gomang wouldn't be able to hurt her. However, Lung Lung had only exchanged a few blows with it when Gomang suddenly changed his strategy. After sweeping her away with a claw, he pounced towards Lingshan and the others. Fuck, Chen and the others were startled. This guy had a human face after all. He knew how to pick on the weak. What a cunning bastard. Everyone hold on. Lingshan shouted. While the others were shocked, they didn't panic. With her as the vanguard, they withstood Gomang's first attack. In terms of strength, Lingshan was second only to Lin Yi and Colt. She'd broken through again after the tournament, and was now a foundation establishment practitioner at the peak. Even so, she couldn't withstand a single blow from someone like Gomang. She wasn't alone, however. Lin Yi had them practice a defensive formation that could withstand attacks far beyond what they could handle. Even a foundation establishment practitioner wouldn't be able to break through in a short amount of time, just like Gomang. Gomang didn't. He didn't expect that surprised. Lung he. That it Ji Lung it. Gomang it. At this moment, Lung Lung had come up to them once again. The attack just now had really scared her out of her wits. Fortunately, Lingshan and the others had put up a good performance. Otherwise, she would have felt guilty for the rest of her life if someone had died from her sneak attack. Gomang repeated the same trick. He turned around and launched a claw attack. His legs were long and slender, and his claws were extremely sharp. When his speed reached a certain level, the threat he posed was no small matter. Even a perfected foundation establishment expert like Cold would not dare to take it head-on. Moreover, Cold had never been the type of person to fight head-on with brute force. But this time, Lung Lung didn't choose to retreat. Instead, she gritted her teeth and blocked the attack with shattering ice palm. She didn't have a choice. She didn't dare to retreat anymore. Otherwise, she'd give the enemy a second chance to ambush Lingshan's group. Although the first time was a close shave, the second time might be different. Puff! Lung Lung spat out a mouthful of blood abruptly. It was not a pleasant thing to use one's weakness to attack the enemy's strength. From the moment she realized it, it was inevitable for her to spit blood after getting injured. Jili Gulu. Gomang paused, realizing that he couldn't retract his claw in time. Instead, Lung Lung had a death grip on it, and as time went on, a bone-chilling coldness spread from his claw to the rest of his body. His entire body was showing signs of freezing. Great! Nice job, Lung Lung sis. Ziyu was overjoyed and wanted to rush up to help. She wanted to let this scary thing have a taste of her instant attack. No, Cold and the others were all shocked by this rash action of hers. Gomang was only affected by her ice aura. It wasn't enough to freeze him completely. With Ziyu's strength, it was suicide for her to charge at him. At this moment, Gomang turned around and spat out a green poisonous gas from its mouth. Cold could muster the courage to take its claws head-on, But she did not dare to touch this thing. She quickly let go of its claws and dodged sideways. Just a little bit of this poisonous gas could kill a person. Jili-gulu. Gomang's face flashed with savagery, and after forcing Lung Lung back, he pounced at Lingshan's group once more. This time his target was even more clear. It was Ziyu, who was standing a little too rashly. Ziyu, get back! Lingshan and the others panicked. Even if they were in a defensive formation, and could share most of the pressure, they still needed someone to be the main pillar. This person could be Lingshan, Wu Qintian, or even Yu Bing, but it couldn't be anyone else. After all, only the three of them had broken through after the tournament, and the others, including Ziyu, were still at Foundation Establishment initial phase. They couldn't take on this responsibility at all, but Ziyu's position was too rash, and they could either push her out of the formation, or force her to be the main pillar. Either way, Ziyu would be in extreme danger, especially since she was Gomang's first target. The results were unimaginable. Chapter 52:20. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Gomang looked as if his scheme had succeeded. His wings immediately swept over with a strong gust of wind. Even a perfected Foundation Establishment expert would not be able to withstand the might of his wings, much less an early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator. Ziyu was completely stunned, her mind blank as she watched the wings get closer and closer. A weird thought popped up in her head. Is this the feeling of death? What are you talking about? Lingshan's voice sounded in her head as she jumped out of the formation and stood in front of her without hesitation. How old are you? You want to die already? It's too early. Qintian appeared in front of her as well. Yeah, Yu Bing was the same. At this point, the only ones who could react in time were the three of them, who were at the peak of the early stage of Foundation Establishment. All of you. Ziyu felt her nose go sour. She knew very well that this was all her fault, and even if she died, it was her own fault. But now, Lingshan and the other two were standing behind her without hesitation. There was only one result to this: trading a life for a life, 3 lives for 1 life for hers. Without the formation, Lingshan and the other two wouldn't be able to survive Gomang's attacks, even if they worked together. At the end of the day, they were only Foundation Establishment practitioners. Gomang saw this, and changed his target from Ziyu to Lingshan, and the other two. Everyone here was his prey. It was just changing the way he ate them. However, at this moment, an extremely powerful bone-chilling cold erupted from behind him, accompanied by a cold voice. Ice prison mirror shatter. 1.5 months after the competition, she didn't do anything else. Even if she was already at Foundation perfection, even if she had the supreme golden core Lin gave her, she didn't have the slightest intention of forcefully breaking through to the golden core stage. After all, she had just become a legend in the competition. Breaking through to the golden core stage would only deplete her reserves. Even if she succeeded, she'd just fade into the crowd. Lung Lung naturally wouldn't do something stupid like that. And so she only did one thing. That was to train her trump card, prison drawing. Of course, she also had an even stronger skill: Ice Prism Mirror Break. The Ice Prism Mirror shattered. Even Duan Muyu, who had unleashed his full strength back then, could not withstand it. Naturally, it was the same for the Gomang in front of him. He collapsed on the spot, becoming a human-faced, bird-bodied ice sculpture. Lingshan and the others looked at each other, their eyes filled with fear and relief. If Lung Lung didn't do it in time, they'd all become Gomang's food. On the other side, Lin was facing Gomang alone. Unexpectedly, he wasn't able to kill it instantly. This Gomang was very cunning. It basically never attacked with its full strength. It would always move around to restrain Lin, and its speed was extremely fast. Lin couldn't finish it off with the 5 elements murderous aura. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let Cold and the others fall into such a dangerous and bitter battle. This guy is a little troublesome. Lin couldn't help but frown. Although this Gomang's strength wasn't at the level of Golden Core, it was definitely above most of the Foundation Establishment Perfection Masters. Of course, it wouldn't be a big deal if that was all. Lin could handle it, but because he was worried about the third Gomang that hadn't appeared, He didn't dare to stray too far away from the others. Otherwise, he'd be in big trouble if he fell into the trap of luring the tiger away from the mountain. However, this would put him in a bind. The cunning Gomang only used all sorts of long-range attacks, but never a direct confrontation. Linny couldn't even attack it, let alone kill it. When the 5 elemental killing aura was useless, Lin Yi's only move was electric arc. It wasn't hard to hit the Gomang with the speed of the electric arc, but the problem was that the opponent wasn't the Fire Bat King, but the Gomang that surpassed Foundation Establishment perfection. The power of the electric arc could only tickle it, but it would be naive to think that it could kill it. Poof! That Gomang shot a green poisonous gas from afar. It didn't even bother to see if it was effective. After it was done, it turned around and retreated without any hesitation. What the hell? Linny was helpless. Other than sending an electric arc to slightly numb it, there was nothing else he could do, unless he unleashed his extreme butterfly microsteps to catch up to it. As long as he could close the distance between them to within 3 steps, the Gomang could forget about avoiding his 5 elemental killing aura. Unfortunately, he dared not take the risk, because he knew that the 3rd Gomang was waiting for an opportunity to strike. If Lung Lung was in perfect condition, it would be fine. As long as she could hold on for a bit, Linny would be able to play along even if he knew that the Gomang was trying to lure him away. He had enough confidence that he could get back before anything happened to them. But Lung Lung had used up a lot of energy from using the ice prison mirror. She didn't even have the ability to protect herself. Lingshan and the others helped Lung Lung sit down to recover. As they looked at each other, they could see the predicament Linny was in, but there was nothing they could do. After all, they didn't even have the strength to act tough. Otherwise, they'd end up like Ziyu and drag everyone else into danger. These Gomang are all crazy. Shouldn't they know when to retreat after suffering a loss? What's the point of them sticking to us like this? Shintian said helplessly. That's true. He looks like he's very smart. Why would a smart person do something like that? Yu Bing and the others were confused as well. Lingshan thought about it and spoke up. They're trying so hard to keep us here. Don't tell me they have reinforcements? Even Linny couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. He'd been keeping an eye on the 3rd Gomang all this time, and was only thinking of luring the tiger away from the mountain. He hadn't thought of this possibility. From the way the 3 Gomang moved in unison, it was obvious that they were existences that moved in groups. In that case, it was very likely that there was a 4th or 5th Gomang, or even more. Chapter 52-21. Lingshan and the others nodded in unison, maintaining their defensive formation as they moved forward. Compared to staying in one spot, this was still a little risky. But compared to the possibility of them sitting on the ground and waiting for death, this risk was worth it. As soon as they started moving, the Gomang that had been clinging to Linny all this while suddenly became a lot more intense. While it was still very careful to avoid a direct confrontation, it was clearly putting in more effort in its attacks, as if trying to stop the group from moving forward. Interesting. Linny narrowed his eyes at the strange reaction. Boss, what did you find? Shintian asked. If I'm not wrong, this reaction proves 2 things, Linny said thoughtfully. What 2 things? The others were confused. First, there's a high chance that they have reinforcements of the same species. Otherwise, there's no reason for them to keep bothering us. If they're the only 2 left, they should know that they can't do anything to us. Continuing wouldn't do them any good, and they might even get themselves killed, Linny analyzed. This analysis was based on the premise that the Gomang had to have enough intelligence, or it wouldn't be possible if they were just driven by their animal instincts. Of course, from what they'd seen, the latter was very unlikely. Yes, it's very possible. The others nodded in agreement. Second, we need to be even more careful from now on. We might run into even greater danger ahead, something even more ferocious than these Gomangs, Linny said solemnly. What do you mean? The others didn't understand. Think about it. If there aren't any other powerful beings ahead, do you think we'd be able to shake off the Gomang with our speed? Linny asked. Impossible. The others shook their heads. They were walking on the ground after all, and their speed wasn't fast at all. Gomang, on the other hand, was flying in the air. It was a piece of cake for it to keep an eye on them. If that's the case, why would they be so nervous? They could have gotten a Gomang to follow us unhurriedly and wait for their reinforcements to arrive before attacking. There's only one reason why it's trying so hard to hinder our advance. Once we advance a certain distance, we'll no longer be under their control, Linny said indifferently. That means that if we go any further, we won't be in their territory anymore, but in the territory of another existence. Shintian realized. Yes, and that existence must be extremely strong, at least on par with these Gomang, maybe even stronger. Yubing nodded. Ugh. Lingshan couldn't help but smile bitterly. Doesn't that mean we've gone out of the wolf's den into the tiger's den? That is true. Trials are always like this. There are dangers everywhere. Everyone will slowly get used to it, comforted Lin Yi with a smile. But big brother Lin Yi, aren't you nervous at all? If it's something even stronger than these Gomang, wouldn't it be more dangerous for us to keep going? Ziyu couldn't help but ask. In theory, yes. Lin Yi nodded. But we have to go forward if we want to go to the river of consciousness. No matter how dangerous it is, we have to muster up our courage and go through it. We can't just give up halfway and become deserters, can we? I don't want to be a deserter. Ziyu shook her head, and the others had the same attitude. Since they'd decided to participate in this trial, they'd already prepared themselves to die. If they couldn't even handle this, how were they supposed to be able to hold their own in the future? How were they supposed to be Lin Yi's true helpers? All right, let's continue then. Lin Yi nodded, pleased. He wouldn't force anyone, and it wasn't a big deal if someone wanted to back out now. It was human nature, and he wouldn't hesitate to send them back to the teleportation formation with the others before setting off again. The group continued forward, and Gomang's attacks became more and more intense, but it didn't stop them at all. After all, it didn't dare to attack them head-on, or Lin Yi's killing intent would be enough to send it on its way. After a while, Lin Yi's eyelid twitched. I sensed the location of the third Gomang. From the beginning, he had only been able to sense 2 Gomangs within the range of his perception. He was unable to lock onto the third one's location. Although he couldn't eliminate the possibility of it using some special means to hide, he could now confirm that it was chasing from behind. Furthermore, there was another big guy behind it. Where is it? The group asked. Right behind us, and it brought an even stronger one. It doesn't look friendly. Lin Yi frowned. Before he could do anything else, the Gomang that had been harassing them from the start suddenly charged at them. It was coming at them fiercely, finally coming at them head-on. A cloud of green gas came at them from a tricky angle this time, and it was much closer than before. If Lin Yi dodged to the side like before, the people behind him would be caught in the crossfire. But if he didn't, who knew what would happen to him if he got in contact with it? It wouldn't be a good ending, that's for sure. Careful, Lin Yi bro, Ziyu and the others warned. But Lin Yi wasn't panicking at all. Instead, he had a long-awaited smile on his face. With his strength, no one below the golden core stage could pose a real threat to him. If that Gomang kept harassing them like this, he really wouldn't be able to do anything. But now that it was coming at him head-on, how many lives did it have? Accompanied by a deep dragon roar, the 5 elemental killing aura immediately attacked. In the blink of an eye, it met the terrifying green poisonous gas head-on. In the end, the green poisonous gas collapsed upon contact, unable to withstand a single blow. Then the Gomang was taken care of as well. The human-faced head was penetrated by the 5 elemental killing aura, leaving a huge bloody hole as it collapsed to the ground. In front of the killing intent of the 5 elements, the green poison gas was just child's play. Dodging it carefully would save one's life, but fighting it head-on was suicide. Chapter 52-22. And this was just Lung Lung. If it was any other normal Foundation establishment perfection master, they wouldn't even be able to compare at all. They weren't on the same level at all. However, before everyone could finish cheering, an extremely strong gust of wind suddenly blew past above their heads. Fortunately, they were surrounded by an extremely dense primeval forest. If it was an open and spacious place like a plain, everyone would definitely be blown away. Even so, everyone had to rely on each other to barely stabilize themselves, and it was difficult for them to move forward. What a big gomang. Z looked up at the huge silhouette in the sky. The others looked over, and their jaws dropped as well. At this moment, there were two figures, one large and one small, hovering in midair. The smaller one was the third gomang that had disappeared for a long time. In fact, it wasn't considered small given its size. After all, it was more than 3 meters tall when standing upright, but compared to the gomang beside it, it was a complete dwarf. Whether it was wingspan or body length, this gomang was at least 5 times its size. Linny had seen quite a few spirit beasts of this size on Sky-class Island, but there weren't many that had this much pressure. Of course, this was also because Linny was too weak right now. If it were his main body here, there wouldn't be any pressure at all. Even if the gomang was 10 times bigger, it'd still be a toy to him. Be careful, everyone. This guy's at least a golden core stage. Be prepared. Linny said in a low voice. He couldn't tell how strong the opponent was before he made his move, but he was sure that the opponent was in the golden core stage, and it wouldn't be as simple as the early stage, or the peak of the early stage. If he didn't handle it well, it would be a fatal threat to everyone. The gigantic gomang did not attack directly. Instead, it used its bestial eyes to look down at everyone and suddenly said, "Humans, surrender or die." Lingshan and the others paused, looking at each other. This guy could actually speak human language? The 3 gomangs were communicating with each other in a very human-like manner, but their words weren't human. They didn't expect this guy to be able to speak human language, too, and with perfect articulation. Linny didn't find it strange at all. Spirit beasts could even turn into humans once they reached a certain level, and speaking human language was a piece of cake. This guy had a human face, too, so it wasn't strange for him to have human vocal cords. As long as it wanted to, it could learn human language. "What are you?" Linny asked calmly as he sized it up. "I am the ancient Gomang King," the giant gomang replied. "Bullshit." Although gomang's main characteristic is a bird's body and a human face, the gomang mentioned in the ancient texts were all existences that stood on 2 scarlet snakes. Besides, if you're really the Gomang King from the primordial era, how could you only have this little bit of strength? You don't even have the face to show your face when you don't have a mountain opening period. Do you really think I've never been educated? King Gomang was left at a loss for words. His massive face clearly blushed as though he was a fraud who had been exposed on the spot. It was as awkward as one could get. Lingshan and the others looked at Lin Yi with respect. They'd been nervous to see such a big guy coming at them so fiercely, but Lin Yi was able to make him choke with just 2 sentences. He was practically the reincarnation of Zhuge Wuhou. "This place is sealed off, and the qi is lacking. Our Gomang clan is getting weaker with each generation. It's nothing strange that we can't compare to the ancient era." King Gomang was left speechless for a long time before he reacted. He said angrily, "To think that a mere human dares to speak such arrogant words to humiliate me. I'll let you die a tragic death." Linny didn't panic at all, curling his lips nonchalantly. "I'm just speaking the truth. What's there to insult? You're the one who's weaker than the previous generation. Can't I question you?" They'd thought that a fight would break out at this point, since they'd all seen how savage Gomang was. He'd even eaten the 3 little ones on sight, let alone this big guy that was at least at the golden core stage. However, the primordial King Gomang didn't attack him directly. Instead, he was surprisingly amicable. He said, "Fine, on account of your reverence for my Gomang race, I can spare your lives as long as you surrender obediently and don't resist." Lingshan and the others were speechless. None of what Lin Yi had said had been about the Gomang clan. Had they missed it? Or was this ancient Gomang king overthinking things? Surrender obediently? Don't resist? Doesn't that mean we're dead? You Gomang treat us humans like food. We saw it all just now. Do you take us for fools? Lin Yi said with a faint smile. Did they really eat it? The ancient Gomang king asked. How can it be fake? Lin Yi curled his lips. Bastard! How dare you steal and eat the tributes? Primordial King Gomang was instantly enraged. He turned around and grabbed the Gomang beside him with his claw. Ignoring the Gomang's pleas for mercy, Gomang crushed it into a pile of mangled corpses that fell from midair. This scene caused everyone to feel a chill run down their spines, and they looked at each other in dismay. Isn't this fellow a bit too ferocious? He even killed his own kind just like that. That crushing strength truly caused one's heart to palpitate. All right, now you can believe my sincerity. As long as you surrender obediently, I promise I won't harm a single hair on you. The ancient Gomang king turned around with a kind face. Only someone with a hole in their brain would believe such nonsense. Everyone scoffed, only to see Linny smile faintly. If you want us to surrender obediently, you should at least let us know how we'll be treated after we surrender, right? If we become your food again, wouldn't we all die a wrongful death? In the name of the ancient Gomang king, I guarantee that you won't be in any danger after you surrender. You'll just have your freedom restricted to a certain extent, and you won't be able to move around freely. Compared to losing your life now, this price is worth it, right? The ancient Gomang king patiently guided them. Linny smiled and suddenly asked, "What's with the tribute?" Chapter 52-23. Is that so? Then let's talk about it. Linny said as he led the group forward, completely ignoring the massive primordial King Gomang in the sky. However, before they could take 2 steps, a sharp wind blade surged down from the sky and struck right in front of them. At the same time, it was accompanied by King Gomang's voice that was filled with killing intent. "Mere humans, how dare you toy with me? Do you really want to die?" The power of the wind blade gave everyone a fright. Even Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. From the looks of it, this King Gomang was probably in existence on par with a golden core late stage at the very least. With his Yuan Shun at a mere foundation establishment level, he didn't even dare say he had much confidence against ordinary golden core masters, much less a creature on par with a golden core late stage. Not to mention that he had Lingshan and the others by his side. Am I toying with you? Aren't you going to allow us to talk about it after making such a harsh request? Linny asked calmly. Although the opponent's strength was beyond his expectations, he was certain of one thing through this exchange. If the opponent wanted to capture them alive, the primordial King Gomang wouldn't dare attack them unless absolutely necessary. Just like the powerful wind blade from before, it was at most a threat. All right, I'll give you a chance to talk. But the prerequisite is that you don't take another step forward, or you'll die. King Gomang said sternly. Don't take another step forward? Linny laughed when he heard that, saying meaningfully, that means if we take another step forward, we'll be out of your control. Am I right? Ugh. Gomang's face immediately showed a hint of panic. Lin Yi's words had clearly hit the nail on the head. Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed to emphasize that they couldn't take another step forward. That Gomang subordinate wouldn't have risked his life to launch a sneak attack on Lin Yi's group. There was only one reason. This was the border of their Gomang territory. Looks like I was right, Lin Yi said with a faint smile. He suddenly took a step forward, stepping right past the deep mark left behind by King Gomang's wind blade. How dare you? Primordial King Gomang turned anxious, as he immediately attacked with all his might. But at that moment, a hair-raising hissing sound came from opposite him. A gigantic snake dozens of meters long shot into the sky. Its scales were a dazzling bright red, making it look like a gigantic fire snake. Hiss 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 hiss, this human sure is clever. To think that the mighty King Gomang would be fooled by a mere human. How delightful. The gigantic fire snake similarly spoke in the human tongue, as it laughed heartily without any fear. Everyone was alarmed when they saw this. A single primordial King Gomang was already troublesome enough, and now, a gigantic fire snake that was clearly not to be trifled with had suddenly appeared. It was as though they had been surrounded by dumplings. Only Lin Yi's face didn't look surprised at all. It was as if he had expected this scene. Red-scaled serpent, are you trying to ruin my plans? Primordial King Gomang stared at the gigantic fire snake with an unfriendly expression. A terrifying dark green aura lingered around him, sending chills down one's spine. Hiss 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 hiss. Darn bird, are you out of your mind? There are so many tributes in my territory. Who's ruining whose plans? Red-scaled serpent's head suddenly grew a pair of ridiculously large scales. From afar, it looked like a gigantic scarlet ghastly face that left one's hair standing on end. Bullshit! They're all in my territory. Primordial King Gomang said angrily. If not for a darn bird like you coming out to obstruct me, they would have long been in my territory. Besides, isn't there already a tribute walking over by itself? Before red-scaled serpent's voice faded, its tail, which had been hidden somewhere, suddenly swept out from the dense forest, heading straight for Lin Yi. Everyone was shocked. This red-scaled serpent was clearly in a standoff with Primordial King Gomang. But it had already locked onto Lin Yi. These fellows were truly craftier than the last. The red-scaled serpent's tail was extremely fast, but Lin Yi was even faster. This time, he didn't hold back because of Lingshan and the others. With extreme butterfly steps, he turned into a blur, and the snake's tail missed without a doubt. Hiss hiss, this human's speed isn't to be underestimated. What an impressive tribute! Red-scaled serpent's expressionless face showed an unprecedented look of shock. It had been guarding this place for countless years, and no one had ever been able to dodge its attacks so easily. It seems like you all care a lot about the tribute. Can you explain to me what tribute it is? Lin Yi had already teleported back to his original spot. If one wasn't strong enough, they would think that he had never left at all. The Primordial King Gomang's explanation of the tribute was obviously bullshit. If it was really a tribute, Red-Scaled Serpent wouldn't have said that Lin Yi and the others were tributes. The two were clearly on equal footing, and the Red-Scaled Serpent would never give any tribute to the Primordial King Gomang. Moreover, from their tone, it was clear that they were fighting for the tribute. Hiss hiss, so this darn bird didn't explain it to you? Red-Scaled Serpent was a little surprised as it hissed. Darn bird, that's where you're wrong. Since you want to capture them as tribute, you can't possibly keep them in the dark, right? Otherwise, why would they be willing to work with you? You darn birds have such ugly faces for nothing. It's a pity that you've never had a brain since ancient times. Don't have a brain, Red-Scaled Serpent. Do you believe I won't skin you alive today to restore the glory of the primordial Gomang race? Primordial King Gomang bellowed angrily. I say you don't have a brain, but you really don't. What kind of bullshit glory have you darn birds ever had? Besides, even if we did have a tiny bit of glory, it's only because our red-scaled serpent race was hoodwinked by you in primordial times and foolishly worked for you for a period of time. What else is there to mention? Red-scaled serpent hissed disdainfully. Hoodwinked. Our primordial Gomang race's coming-of-age ceremony has always been to capture two red-scaled serpents as close companions. All of this is based on true strength. If not for that lord, your red-scaled serpent race would only be our vassal. You wouldn't have the right to stand here and talk to me, Primordial King Gomang said condescendingly. Chapter 52-24. Come if you have the guts. Gomang laughed coldly. The two big fellows were at each other's throats, and the people below watched with their mouths agape. They had been on tenterhooks until just now, be it Gomang King or the red-scaled snake. Either one of them was enough to wipe them out, especially if they were to attack together. No matter how strong Lin Yi was, he wouldn't be able to protect them. Who would have thought that the two would start fighting each other first? Haha, looks like the ancient Gomang and red-scaled snakes have a deep relationship. This matches up with the ancient legends. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. But he was more concerned about the great Sir Gomang King had mentioned. It was obvious that the great Sir's existence suppressed the hatred between the two races. From this, it could be deduced that the tribute they were talking about was to satisfy the great Sir's request. A playful smile appeared on Lin Yi's lips. Interesting, very interesting. This place that only appeared once in 1,000 years really did have some hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Boss, what do we do now? Should we use this chance to slip away? Shintian didn't dare make a sound, afraid of alerting the two murderous fellows. He only mouthed. The others looked at Lin Yi as well, thinking the same thing. If the two really started fighting, they wouldn't just be spectators. They'd be caught up in the shockwaves, and they'd have to be quick if they wanted to slip away. We can't. Lin Yi shook his head faintly. Those two might look like they were about to fight, but in reality, they had been paying attention to their every move. If there was even the slightest bit of movement, they'd be the first to attack. Then what do we do? Ling Shan and the others looked at each other. If they didn't think of a way to slip away, they couldn't just stay here and watch, could they? They'd really lose their lives if they weren't careful. And they wouldn't even have a chance to slip away after the outcome was decided. Don't be too nervous. Let's just wait and see. Lin Yi smiled. To Ling Shan and the others, this was indeed a scene that they couldn't even breathe. But to him, it was just a show. At that moment, the primordial King Gomang and the gigantic scarlet-scaled snake were already at daggers drawn. Despite the fuse having been lit, the two suddenly stopped. On account of that, Lord, I'll let you off today. King Gomang snorted coldly. Hiss, who is going to let who go? You damn bird. You really know how to talk big. The red-scaled serpent hissed in laughter. It then glanced at Lin Yi and the others below and said, How about this? We'll split the tributes evenly and mind our own business. It's clearly the territory of our primordial Gomang clan. Why should we split it equally? What wishful thinking! Primordial King Gomang curled his lips in disdain as he said in a tone of charity, How about this? I'll leave the tribute in your territory to you. Everyone will take care of their own territories. Or don't blame me for not standing on ceremony. So there's no room for discussion. The red-scaled serpent was enraged. After witnessing Lin Yi's speed, it knew that capturing Lin Yi wasn't realistic at all. If it really did as he said, it wouldn't even get a single tribute, and would face heavy punishment. Of course, King Gomang hadn't even finished his sentence when the red-scaled serpent swooped down towards Ling Shan and the others. He was both shocked and angry. How dare you break the Lord's rules? You're courting death. King Gomang didn't dare fall behind and swooped down as well. He couldn't miss out on the rare human tributes that were delivered to his doorstep. Even if he died, he wouldn't let that bastard red-scaled serpent have it. Ling Shan and the others were shocked, their faces filled with fear. Now, not only did they not get to watch the show, they'd become the target of everyone. Even if they had a few lives, it wouldn't be enough to kill them. These two were strong existences on par with a golden core late stage, and their defensive formation could at most deal with a foundation establishment level attack. It was completely useless in a situation like this, and even Lung Lung's ice prism mirror wouldn't have any effect. They could only wait for death. At this moment, Lin Yi suddenly said, You two really don't seem to care about me at all, do you? You're nothing in front of us. King Gomang couldn't help but scoff at that. Hiss, looks like you're not smart at all, but a complete idiot. You're just a little faster. You're lucky to be able to escape this disaster. Do you really think you can fight against me and this dead bird? I'm very curious, what's in your head? Is it all shit? Red-scaled serpent mocked without the slightest scruple. Everyone, including Lin Yi, were tributes in their eyes. It was a fool's dream to escape their claws. Of course, it was precisely because they were tributes that they were so patient. After all, the tributes had to be alive, or the Lord wouldn't be satisfied even if they were delivered. If not for that, everyone present would have long become their food. You'll find out what's in my head soon enough. But before that, I want to ask you one last question. What is this master you're talking about? Lin Yi asked back calmly. You want to know? Red-scaled serpent stopped diving down and exchanged a teasing glance with King Gomang. King Gomang also stopped and sneered. Foolish human, as long as you follow me obediently, you will naturally be able to meet that Lord. I guarantee you that you won't be disappointed. Oh, forget it. I'm actually not that curious. I was just mentioning it in passing. Lin Yi shook his head. Hiss, you're not that stupid. Anyway, there are still a lot of tributes here. It doesn't matter if you're here or not. It doesn't matter even if you escape. The remaining tributes are enough for me to report. Red-scaled serpent appeared rather carefree. It didn't feel that it was embarrassing for Lin Yi to escape. To it, as long as it could obtain enough human tributes to fulfill its mission, everything else was negotiable. Then are the two of you not going to compete? Even if all of us surrender, it's still a question of who has more, right? Lin Yi said with a teasing look. Chapter 5225. SSSSSS, I'll seal your mobility first. As for how to split the spoils, that's a matter for later. Kid, don't embarrass yourself with such a crude attempt at sowing discord, alright? The red-scaled serpent's tone was filled with disdain. Those that could reach their level were no fools. Furthermore, be it the primordial Gomang race, or the red-scaled serpent race, they were races with extremely high intellect. They had always been the ones plotting against others. When had they ever been schemed against by others? Is that so? Then I've miscalculated. Linny nodded honestly. Lingshan and the others looked at each other. The situation before them should have been extremely dangerous. In theory, apart from Lin Yi, all of them were facing a tragic fate of being wiped out. Yet, listening to Lin Yi's conversation with the two fellows, they felt strangely at ease. It was as if everything was under Lin Yi's control. This thought gave them quite a fright. Lin Yi only had the strength of a foundation establishment perfection. He should have been helpless against the Gomang King and the snake. How was he still in control of the situation? Could it be that their absolute trust and worship for Lin Yi had made them think that they were deceiving themselves? Of course you've miscalculated. Be a good tribute. Before he could finish his sentence, King Gomang shot out 4 giant wind blades in a row, overlapping each other to form a well-shaped attack. It sealed off Lin Yi's space to dodge, and unless he wanted to take one of the giant wind blades head-on, all he could do was stay where he was. Even Lingshan and the others, who worshipped and trusted Lin Yi to the core, didn't dare think of taking on Gomang's wind blade head-on. After all, this wasn't Lin Yi's main body, just a pure soul of a foundation establishment level. That would really kill them. Lin Yi's choice was within everyone's expectations. Even when the 4 giant wind blades fell at the same time, he did not move an inch. And in the next moment, just when everyone thought that this was an opening for Lin Yi to escape, the red-scaled snake had already appeared above his head, its huge and ferocious head less than a meter away from Lin Yi. No one expected that primordial King Gomang and crimson-scaled snake would really choose to join forces. They did not even exchange greetings, yet they were able to cooperate so well. Were these two really racial enemies? Lin Yi frowned. Everything else was fine. But the crux was that extremely pungent stench was truly unbearable. And even if he was a soul core, he couldn't help but feel nauseous. Big brother, how many years has it been since you last brushed your teeth? Lin Yi was still in the mood to crack a joke. Hiss, you're still pretending to be calm at a time like this? You humans sure are hypocritical, but you won't have the chance to do so in the future. The red-scaled snake opened its jaws abruptly, as if it was going to swallow Lin Yi whole. Lingshan and the others paled at the sight, but Lin Yi himself didn't have much of a reaction. Instead he mumbled, "Aren't tributes supposed to be alive?" Hiss, as long as you're in my stomach, you won't die for a while. The red-scaled snake laughed delightedly as it bit down. Is that so? That's a shame. I might be willing to try it some other time, but I'll pass today. So many people are waiting for me, so I'll send you on your way first. With that, Lin Yi did not retreat, but instead went up to meet it, his left hand shoving into the snake's mouth. Haha, weird things happen every year, especially this year. I can't believe I've met one that's coming to die. Gomang couldn't help but laugh at the scene. While he was letting the red-scaled snake take advantage of the situation, there were still so many tributes down there. Letting one go wouldn't be a big deal. But before he could finish laughing, the red-scaled snake's body suddenly expanded like a balloon. Gomang froze. What kind of move was this? He'd never seen the red-scaled snake use it before. Not long after, the long and narrow body of the red-scaled snake had impressively swelled up to the size of a huge balloon. Then with a bang, it exploded into countless pieces on the spot. Blood rained down from the sky, and a foul stench assailed the nostrils. Gomang was dumbfounded, and so was Lingshan and the others. The entire scene was dead silent. What's going on? Chuntian and the others looked at each other. Even they couldn't react in time. Such a powerful red-scaled snake had been killed by Lin Yi in one move. Big bro Lin Yi is so strong. Ziyu didn't think too much about it. No matter what Lin Yi did, she wouldn't be surprised at all. Otherwise, how could he be her big bro Lin Yi? No wonder he was purposely distancing himself from us. So that's why. Lung Lung looked at Lin Yi, her eyes sparkling. She didn't know that Lin Yi had such a terrifying killer move. And she didn't know that Lin Yi could kill an existence like the red-scaled snake in one hit. However, she could guess Lin Yi's intentions. If they were to get too close, even if he had a killer move in his hands, they wouldn't dare to use it carelessly. Otherwise, they would be the first to die. You. Who the hell are you? The primordial Gomang King stuttered. The red serpent had always been an old rival of his, and they had fought at least 8 out of 10 times. It could be said that they knew each other very well, and their strengths had always been on par. He never expected the red serpent to die in Lin Yi's hands with a bang. Even now, he still didn't know what Lin Yi had done. Me? I'm just a human's tribute. Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly, as if dealing with the red-scaled snake was nothing more than a trivial matter to him. The more Lin Yi acted in such a manner, the more unfathomable Gomang King felt. He subconsciously flew up, afraid that he would follow in the red-scaled snake's footsteps and die at the hands of this human for no apparent reason. Just who are you? Gomang King sized up Lin Yi again. It doesn't matter even if I tell you my name. Do you think you've heard of me in a place like this? Lin Yi couldn't help but be amused. He said casually, looking at how nervous you are. You probably don't want me as a tribute anymore, do you? Alright, you may leave. Gomang King agreed. Alright, if that's the case, let's go. Lin Yi waved to the group and left without another word. Chapter 52-26. Lin Yi looked up at him and smiled faintly. That's impossible. We came together, so we naturally have to leave together. If you're indignant, feel free to try stopping me. You. Primordial King Gomang was immediately frightened by Lin Yi's tone. He had always been high and mighty, and Lin Yi was nothing more than an ant in his eyes. But now, with this ruckus, he had become the weaker party. He was left dumbfounded by Lin Yi. How about it? Quickly tell me if you agree. We still need to continue on our journey. We don't have time to waste with you. Lin Yi's tone turned more brazen. Punk, this is the territory of our primordial Gomang clan. You want to be unreasonable with me? You're barking up the wrong tree. Primordial King Gomang snorted coldly. Is that so? From your tone, you should be much stronger than red-scaled snake. Why don't you try the attack it just received? I guarantee you that it'll be powerful. Lin Yi said with a faint smile. Punk, do you really think that you can scare me like that? Although the primordial King Gomang maintained an extremely vigilant stance, he couldn't help but show signs of cowering. However, it wasn't realistic for him to be scared off so easily. Ignoring the issue of his reputation, he would be in deep trouble if he didn't have any tributes to report to that lord. I didn't expect to scare you. But do you have the guts to come down and attack me? Lin Yi taunted without any scruples. Primordial King Gomang did not say a word as he sent out a gigantic wind blade. That was his answer. Lin Yi easily dodged it. At Primordial King Gomang's height, the wind blade was only a deterrent at best. It was impossible for it to really hit him. He immediately looked up with a grin. From the looks of it, you don't dare to come down and attack me. The primordial Gomang clan sounds impressive, but if a mighty primordial King Gomang like you acts in such a manner, it's obvious what sort of people they are. How dare you? Primordial King Gomang fell for the goading as he swooped down in exasperation. He only had one target, Lin Yi. Instead of being alarmed, Lin Yi was delighted. He wasn't afraid of King Gomang's wrath, but he was afraid that the fellow would cower and retreat. After all, it was a powerful existence comparable to the late-stage Golden Core realm. Once it targeted them, everyone, including himself, would not be able to live in peace. The only solution was to wipe it out like how he had dealt with Crimson-Scaled Snake. Only then would there be no future problems. Another thing that made Lin Yi feel fortunate was that this guy didn't seem to have any intentions of doing anything to Lingshan and the others. Otherwise, no matter how many tricks he had up his sleeves, he wouldn't be able to protect them. In the blink of an eye, King Gomang's figure was less than 10 meters away from Lin Yi. The dark green miasma around him could almost scrape Lin Yi's face, leaving Lingshan and the others trembling in fear. However, There was nothing they could do in this situation. Even Lung Lung, who was the strongest among them, could only watch from the sidelines. Forcing herself would only make things worse. Of course, Lin Yi had no intention of asking for their help. He was satisfied as long as he could put some distance between them and not implicate them. Go to hell, kid. King Gomang roared with killing intent. As long as the miasma entered their bodies, no human would be able to survive, including Lin Yi, who had no idea what tricks he had up his sleeves. Alright, this distance is about right. You can go too. Crimson-scaled snake is waiting for you. Lin Yi grinned as he tossed out the pure chi pill fire bomb that he had been preparing for a long time in his other hand. From the moment he was targeted by the three Gomangs and realized that there was something going on, he had been storing up chi pill fire bombs in secret. And not just one, but one in each hand. If this were back on Sky-class Island, he might be much stronger than he was now, but he might not be able to do something like that. It was an extremely dangerous thing to do. The more he stored the bomb, the more unstable it became. Even Lin Yi himself would be in trouble if he made a mistake, not to mention two bombs affecting each other. However, in the 10 months since his soul had been projected into the mortal world, Lin Yi's consciousness had improved by leaps and bounds. His control of chi had become more precise, which was why he was able to do what he was doing now. It was fortunate that he had a chi pill fire bomb in each hand, one against the crimson-scaled snake, and one against King Gomang. Otherwise, Lin Yi would really be at a loss. Less than 10 meters above the ground, the true chi core fire bomb exploded with a loud bang. Without the isolation of the red-scaled snake's belly, the power of the explosion this time was much more terrifying than the previous one. Almost everything within a radius of several li was razed to the ground in an instant. Even Lingshan and the others weren't spared from the shockwave. It was fortunate that Lin Yi had purposely put some distance between him and them, and that the pure chi pill fire bomb only exploded 10 meters from the ground. Otherwise, they wouldn't just be in a sorry state, they'd be heavily injured. It's dead, right? Lingshan didn't wait for the commotion to pass before she forced her head to look up. That's for sure. Boss is extraordinary. Even the crimson scale snake is dead. That Gomang King must be dead as well, Shintian snickered. The others nodded with a smile. Although it was still chaos above, everyone could see that the true chi pill fire bomb was just inches away from primordial King Gomang. It would be a miracle if he didn't die from the explosion. However, Lin Yi's expression wasn't as relaxed as the others. They were used to relying on their eyes, and couldn't see what was going on above them. Lin Yi, however, was different. Nothing above them could escape his consciousness. And from what he could sense, the situation wasn't that optimistic. It's really troublesome this time. Lin Yi sighed helplessly. Before he finished, Lingshan and the others gasped in shock as a figure shot out from the chaos. It was King Gomang. That was close, that was close. Luckily, I have shadow escape, or I really would have died from your sneak attack. You're really something, human. Primordial King Gomang wore a look of joy. He was in a sorry state at that moment. His colorful feathers were in tatters. Instead of calling him the mighty primordial King Gomang, it was more accurate to call him a drenched chicken. You're not bad yourself. At least a little stronger than that stupid snake. Lin Yi said faintly, his expression unchanged. Chapter 52-27. After fighting against each other for so many years, suppressing the red-scaled snake had almost become a sore point for it. Now that it had finally achieved its goal, and even made it so that the red-scaled snake would never be able to rise again, this was naturally a matter worthy of celebration. Is it a lot? Lin Yi smiled as well. There was no hint of regret or pity on his face. Instead, it was as though everything was still under his control. Regardless of whether he managed to kill the primordial Gomang King or not, Gomang King could forget about escaping from his grasp. They were on completely different levels. Kid, stop pretending. You're still too young to be able to scare me. Primordial King Gomang sneered as he curled his lips. I admit that you do have some tricks up your sleeves. To think that a mere perfected Foundation establishment human would be able to grasp such a powerful move. There probably isn't another human like you in the world, right? It's a pity that I'm the primordial Gomang King. I won't be scared that easily. Such a terrifying move must take a lot out of me. Using it once is the limit, and using it twice would be a miracle. As for the third time, In other words, he didn't believe that Lin Yi could use it a third time. Otherwise, he would have long fled. He wouldn't have stayed here to waste his breath with Lin Yi. Your analysis makes sense. You're right. I'm helpless against you now. You win, Lin Yi said frankly. With that, Ling Shan and the others looked at each other. They didn't know how far Lin Yi could go, but they could guess that Lin Yi's Chi Pill Fire Bomb had great limitations. Using it twice was indeed the limit. But even so, there was no need for him to be so honest, was there? According to their understanding, Lin Yi should at least put on an act to scare the other party. That way, he could at least think of a way to find an opportunity. Why did he just raise his hands and surrender? The one who was most shocked by Lin Yi's words wasn't the crowd, but the primordial Gomang King. He was certain that Lin Yi didn't have a third Chi Pill Fire Bomb. If Lin Yi had continued holding on, he wouldn't have been able to scare him at all. But now he felt a little guilty. He couldn't help but mutter, "Is this kid trying to trick me into going down again? Even I've surrendered. They don't even have the strength to fight back. What are you hesitating for? Hurry up and take our tributes away," Lin Yi urged from below. Gomang King immediately felt even more uncertain. He suspected that this was a psychological attack from Lin Yi to scare him away. Escaping from the shadows was a life-saving technique of the Gomang race, but it could only be used once in a short period of time. The Chi Pill Fire Bomb had already injured him quite badly. If he were to use it again, his chances of survival would be close to zero. However, with so many human tributes right under his nose, he wasn't willing to give up just like that. After all, that lord wasn't so easily fooled. For a moment, Gomang King was in a dilemma. Oi, what's the meaning of this? If you don't say anything, we're leaving," Lin Yi urged again. Seeing that the other was still hesitating, he immediately walked away and said disdainfully, "What, Gomang King? I think you're more like a cowardly rat king. You're so afraid of a mere foundation establishment perfected human. There's really no one like you." "You're saying I'm afraid of you?" Gomang King finally reacted when he heard that. "Isn't that so?" Lin Yi looked at him askance. "You don't know what's good for you." Primordial King Gomang grunted as he swooped down at an unprecedented speed. Although he looked like a drenched rat, his aura was far more ferocious than when he was at his peak. This was a result of his bloodlust stirring from his injuries. At this moment, he was far more dangerous than ever. "Boss, be careful." Ling Shan and the others were alarmed. Even they could tell that Gomang King was going all out this time. Unless Lin Yi had a third true Chi Pill Fire Bomb, it would be too much. Lin Yi, of course, didn't have a third pill fire bomb. Just now he had already reached his limit. Even if he could rely on the jade space to replenish his chi, and even if Gomang King's hesitation gave him a chance to condense another pill fire bomb, that amount of time was not enough. With his current strength, unless he compressed the pill fire bomb to the limit, it would be difficult for him to pose a threat to an existence like Gomang King. At most, it would just be a tickle. And other than the pill fire bomb, it was impossible for him to rely on other means to deal with Gomang King with his current Yuan Shin physique. Especially when he was facing a berserk Gomang King, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had a slim chance of survival. However, Lin Yi didn't panic in the slightest. He didn't even raise his head to look at King Gomang. Instead, he deliberately lowered his head as the corners of his lips curled into a playful smile. However, it was this expression that made the ferocious primordial King Gomang come to an abrupt halt. When they were less than 10 meters apart, Gomang suddenly charged up again. Furthermore, he was even faster than Gomang had swooped down. He was afraid that a repeat of his previous mistake would result in him suffering another true Chi Core Fire Bomb. Fuck. Lin Yi immediately cursed. He wore a conflicted expression, as though he was about to suffer internal injuries. His hands were surging with powerful and dangerous chi, as though he could lose control and explode at any moment. However, he forcefully controlled it. This punk was indeed up to no good. Gomang King saw all of this clearly, and could not help but feel a lingering fear. He was thankful that he had been cautious, or he would have followed in the footsteps of Crimson-Scaled Snake. This human was just too freaking dangerous. Unbeknownst to him, all of this was a show that Lin Yi had specially put on for him. Although the amount of time he had was insufficient to condense a powerful pillfire bomb, it wasn't difficult to produce a chi wave that looked extremely dangerous. It was impossible for Gomang King not to fall for such a meticulously designed psychological attack. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.